All right, Susan, we're going to go ahead and get started, and Eliberto and I will watch for to see if they come on, and then we will admit them if any of your colleagues join you, or if you are a solo act. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So we basically have 15 minutes, Susan, to basically talk about your application. So you see the smiling faces of our advisory board members, and the format for our 15 minutes is we will open it with questions that board members might have about your application. So far, you're going to be the only one responding. And then if we still have time left at the remaining 15 minutes, then we will leave that open for any comments that you might want to make. So, so if you want to start, Susan, with introducing yourself, and then we will open it up to questions.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Susan Ferguson. I'm the grants coordinator, basically the grant writer at EFA. So I, along with Courtney, I wrote the grant for the City of Longmont application grant award this year. And basically we were asking for the same funding that we've received in the past for this same project.
Okay, all right. All right, great. So it is time for questions. So
I'll start.
Let's hear them. All right.
I'll start. Hi, Susan.
Graham.
Thank you for your work. My question is regarding your logic model. Most of your outcome success measurements are 80, 90% success, except one is 60%, and that is the family goals attained by the end of the year. And I'm just sort of curious to hear more about, what kind of goals are they and how are they measured and followed up on?
Sorry, I'm distracted from my phone. Family goals. Okay, let me turn this off. I'm looking at the application right now. Do you have that in front of you?
It's nearby. Yeah, it's your logic model.
It's the logic model?
Docs. Yeah.
It's a logic model document.
Yeah, and it says that you anticipate you hope for, the goal is 60% success for family goals attained.
Oh, okay. So that is with our case management in housing. And basically we set out goals, we establish goals.
So Courtney has joined.
Oh, very good. So Courtney would be better able to address that question.
Hi guys, my apologies, and I'm having issues with my camera. So do you want to repeat the question? I can help out.
Yep.
Yeah, Courtney, I was curious about the logic model. You say that most of the measurement outcomes for success are 80 and 90%, except family goals attained, which you're hoping to have 60% success rate. And I was just curious to hear and understand more about what those goals are and how they're developed and followed up on, et cetera.
Sure, great question. So both our housing case managers and our children's program case managers set goals with the family that align with successful exits. And that's everything from housing to mental health, and also goals within the children. So, school goals, behavioral goals, et cetera. We are in the process of sort of formalizing our goal setting and ensuring that they're SMART goals, but we follow a logic similar to that. And the reason why we set it at 60% is goals, right? They transform over time. So oftentimes what will happen is we will set goals with the family upon entry, and as the family gets more comfortable, or, circumstances shift due to being in stable housing, those goals will no longer become relevant, or they're just not attained. And then we adjust, reset new goals, and move forward. Those goals also, just for clarification, are the vast majority of the time set by, what's the word I'm looking for? Indicators that arise from completing the CFSA, so the Colorado Family Self-Sufficiency Assessment that we use as being part of the Family Resource Center Association. So they complete an assessment, they look at areas of need, and then the family assigns their goals based on that. And we do that assessment every 90 days, and so then goals adjust appropriately. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thank you. And I assume you mean SMART goals. You're using the acronym, not the adjective, specific, measurable.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So other questions? Karen Phillips.
I was just wondering, do you have like a waiting list? Are you able to help everybody, or what happens to the people that can't?
Yeah, great question, Karen. So we have what we call a priority list. So we prioritize families based on their circumstances. So an example is a family who is living in their car with a very young child would be prioritized over a family who's doubled up with older children. That priority list ebbs and flows. An example is the past couple of weeks to months, we've been running at 6 or 7 folks consistently on our priority list, which is high. Down to right now, we have 1 or 2 families on our priority list, and it ebbs and flows like that. If a family is actively unhoused, we will house them using hotel vouchers. But a lot of times, as is consistent with family homelessness, is that families are unstably doubled up with another family. So we continually check in with them, and if at any time they become unhoused, then we will put them up in a hotel until we can get them in a unit. And of course, as soon as they become unhoused, that moves them up on our priority list.
Well, that's great. Thank you.
No problem.
So Deanna had the next question. I'm just going to double check. So we have someone in the waiting room. Her name is Laura, but I think she might be for the in-between. Would that be correct? You're not expecting a Laura, right?
We are not. That is correct.
Okay, great. Go, Deanna, with your question.
So I have a financial question. So in looking at your application, you referenced obviously a pretty significant loss. And it looks like you have a plan for addressing that loss. But I'm just curious, part of the loss looks like it derived from additional COVID response efforts. And it looks like your plan is to offset the loss. I'm just curious if you anticipate additional needs going into the next year because of COVID, and how realistic maybe you could just talk a little bit about the plan to offset the loss, if you anticipate additional needs going forward, and what the plan is to sort of juggle those concerns.
Yeah, sure. So I wish our ED was going to be here, and she can't be, and I wish she was here to speak a little bit more to that. We did have some increased costs due to COVID, everything from, covering rent for our transitional housing participants to increased costs in our food bank, and the very significant one being increased financial assistance to families in our basic needs department. We have been able to, we have a, why am I blanking on the name right now? We have an endowment that we've been able to tap for some of that rental assistance for transitional housing. We have reinvigorated some other fundraising, the virtual fundraising, although we are unable to have our annual fundraiser, so we will take a hit there. As far as plan for recovery in more detail, that would be an ED question that I don't have access to. Do we think that there will be additional need? I mean, I think that's something that most organizations, right, are walking through on a month-to-month basis. We don't know how long this crisis will last. And so we're just doing as much fundraising and putting a lot of effort into fundraising and tapping all resources that we possibly can to really focus our energy on meeting the need in the community as we can. And if you want me to have Julie follow up with more specifics, she absolutely can.
Alberto.
Let me just jump in and add that what didn't show in the statements we sent you is that we did raise a lot of funds last year from COVID, and those are showing up in our FY21 statements. So we actually did have quite a large pot of money that has been pulled over into this year. So we have been able to meet all of our expenses to date. And our fundraising is going well. And if that continues, we should be fine for this coming year.
So what's your fiscal year?
It starts on July 1st.
Okay, so
and it's
July 1st.
on June 30th.
Yep, got it.
Thank you, Susan.
So my question is a little more on the strategic part of this. As we are seeing, I'm sure there has been discussions, but just briefly, any strategic plan on the concern about once the moratorium on evictions are lifted, as we know, we're seeing more families in trouble. So I'm just wondering if FI, and I would argue, or if the FRN and for the Family Resource Network that FI is a part of, if there's been any conversations about what strategic responses will be.
Absolutely. So thanks, Alberto. So we work really closely. We actually have it used to be bi-weekly. I think it's moved to monthly. It will likely move back to bi-monthly. Meeting with the county, all FRCs, and any other folks engaged to really look at a strategic response week over week, month over month in terms of rental assistance and bigger picture planning. So as you know, the county has this housing helpline. We work really closely with one another to triage families in a very specific manner that uses the funds available in the community in a very strategic way. We've begun discussing, excuse me, what that could potentially look like once the moratorium is over. But right now, all of our focused efforts are on alleviating arrears on rental properties or for participants, both from the POP program, so for landlords, and also for participants. We are thankfully have access to a lot of state and federal funds that is really making significant impacts on that, anywhere from, arrears of $3,000 all the way up to $15,000. So that once we get to that space and time, hopefully we don't have as many families that will be facing eviction. A large priority of ours is undocumented families, just to ensure that, those that have least amount of access to resources are really prioritized. And then, as we move closer to the moratorium ending, we're just really looking at how we can share resources. So funding for hotel vouchers, spaces and units available to house families, tapping HSP, et cetera. So, I don't have a specific strategy except for the fact that we are talking about it on a very regular basis and shifting resources accordingly as a county-wide effort. I hope that answers your question.
I'd like to add that EFA was really concerned about the eviction landscape and forecasting in Boulder County. And so we joined with the city and we created or got together an early warning eviction team comprised of Boulder County, HHS, eviction, court members, landlords, mobile home managers, and it's basically to keep an eye on the eviction landscape. And so we meet every 2 weeks to try to just see what's coming. And so far it looks okay where we're at as a county.
I think that's the city of Boulder.
Right.
I know that project. That's the city of Boulder's project.
Right. The city and EFA coordinated that.
That's what she was saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we have 1 minute remaining. Who has a question? No other questions for Susan and
Well, I
Courtney?
guess
Oh, go ahead.
in the last 30 seconds, because this is important to us, about 21% of your board is a person of color, according to what you shared. But could you talk a little bit about what I find interesting about EFA is your committees and how they roll up into the board, and what are you looking for in those committees?
Sure, absolutely. And Susan, piggyback this with me, but we have a wide variety of actually very strong committees that roll up into our board. I oversee with our chair the program committee. We have an HR committee, a financial committee, an executive board, but some of the more interesting ones is we have our participant advisory committee. So it's comprised of participants. It's a formal committee. Participants sit on our board of directors. We have our strategic education, which is really an advocacy committee. So they take stances on any type of policy or legislation, ballot measures that are coming into the community to really help move the needle in a more strategic and global way. And then we just recently developed our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Committee, in which there will be board members and committee members that sit on there to help move the needle on diversity, equity, and inclusivity in our organization, but also in terms of recruitment for our committees and our board. We also, just to note, we also have a diversity, equity, and inclusivity task force that is made up of staff that are also working in conjunction with that newly created committee to also just really do the deeper tissue work and help move forward our commitment to that work organization-wide. I don't know if you wanted more detail than that, but we have a very
I think
strong
our time is up, and that's
I don't think he gets more detail.
Good.
So yeah, our 15 minutes are up. So thank you, Susan and Courtney, for joining us this morning. And if you would, we're staying on. We need to invite you to exit. So if you want to click the end the meeting, or leave the meeting, the red button at the bottom right of your screen, then we will wish you a great morning and go on to the next hearing.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
All right, thank
you.
you. So Ellie Bechter, you letting them in? You're on mute.
Yes, I am admitting that.
Thank you. Good morning, Tim and Laura.
Morning.
How are you?
Great.
All right.
Dedicated group of advisory board members on a Saturday. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, here we are. Here we are.
There you are.
So I'm Karen Roney, as Tim knows. I don't know. And Laura, good to meet you. If you want to unmute and show us your smiling face, that'd be wonderful if you can. We have 15 minutes this morning with you. The format is similar to past years, where the advisory board members, the advisory board members have read your proposal. They're ready to ask you questions about your proposal. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves, Tim and Laura, and then we will get started with the questions.
Great. I'm Tim Rocco, the Executive Director of the In-Between of Longmont.
And I'm Laura Liatino. I'm the Development Director, Associate Director for the In-Between, formerly known as Laura Teta. You may recognize that name.
Yes, I have Teta here. So you think about the Laura. Laura was the same name. We were born with that.
Right.
So, okay, I have hit the start button. Who would love to ask the first question? All right, Deanna.
Just I'm just curious, I know that you have 88 units where people can stay for up to 2 years. Do you know what the average stay is? And do you have any figures for how many people transition to stable housing after residing in one of your units?
Right. So approximately 15 to 18 months is the average stay at the inn. That's for our transitional units, but within that 88, the mix of 88, we've recently added more permanent housing, permanent supportive housing units. And so obviously that's going to skew our numbers, but if we just look at transitional housing, about 15 to 18 months, and we're still hitting a target of approximately 90% of those that exit the in-between find stable housing. And what we are finding, because of the fact that recently, in the past several years, we're taking on a few more folks that are on fixed incomes. That's particularly challenging. Obviously, you're probably looking at a subsidized situation. So increasingly, we're seeing a lot of our people exit into a subsidized housing situation. So about 60% of those that exit move into a subsidized situation, and the other 40% would be on the fair market rent situation.
Thank you.
Alberto, did you have a question? And then Karen.
I'll let Karen go first. That's fine.
All right, Karen. Can you unmute?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You have a waiting list, and after 24 months, where do they go? Do you keep track of those people?
Yes, we have a wait list. Last time we checked, we had approximately 18 families and individuals waiting to get into the in-between. And those all come, of course, through our referral agency process. So those 16 partner agencies that bring people to us are the representative sample of that 18 so far. But that, again, fluctuates. It's ticked up a little bit. So, we're curious, is this COVID related or what? But we have moved up from about 12. We generally average about 12 or so, 12, 14, and we're up to about 18 now. So that's not, of course, what we want to see. But, and then I'm sorry, the other piece of your question was?
Oh, do you keep track after people are done?
Oh, yeah.
Time?
Yeah, in fact, we just completed a former resident survey. We started that some years ago. And of the respondents that came back to us, that's where we found that some of this information. Where are they, and are they still housed, and where are they housed? And so our recent data is showing us that, once again, we found about 70% of those that, again, respondents of the survey are living within Boulder County. About 60% of those are here in Longmont, and then about 10% the greater Boulder County. And then from there, some of the neighboring counties, Weld County, et cetera, make up the rest. Yeah, so we do track, and what we try to do is mirror our self-sufficiency matrix that we use on the front end. So people come in and we get a baseline score of where they're at and related to housing, income, resources, things like that. And then we ask those questions periodically throughout their participation in the program. But then on the flip side, a year or two out, we ask those same questions like we do on the way in.
Great. I have one other thing. I noticed there was a statement about policy changes are needed and larger community support. How do you plan? I mean, what kind of policy changes?
I think what we're talking about, you mean number 3 on the strategic goals? Maybe you're referring to that?
Well, it was just that, a lot of policy changes are needed for
Well, and that was going to be my question.
affordable housing.
About that.
Policy efforts to promote affordable housing.
Yeah, I guess that, we have long supported, and, fortunately we have so many good partners, the city being, one of those, where we're in sync with the support of, for example, inclusionary zoning, the 12% mandate, anything we can do to move the needle with more and more inventory around affordable housing. We've trying to, we get back those efforts. It's also plays out in our LHOD group is not what it once was, and Alberto and Karen know about that. But
and Tim, people don't know what LHOT is.
Sorry, Longmont Housing Opportunities Team. It's really a group of community members and organizations that advocate for affordable housing for people experiencing homelessness. But really, it's those kinds of efforts we get behind. It doesn't matter what agency, if it's the Housing Authority or Habitat for Humanity or what have you, that is developing or building a concept to expand affordable housing. We're about also supporting those efforts too. And so it's always our mandate, I think, to work with other agencies and collaborate for the greater good of the entire community around Longmont. And so that's really what we're talking about there, is that it's always on the agenda of things to do, is just stay present and current with what's happening around the community and advocate when it's the right time to do so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Caitlin.
Hi, Tim and Laura. We met what feels like 10 years ago, just before, everything shut down. I think it was like maybe 2 days before everything sort of shut down for COVID.
Right.
One of the things I saw in your application is that you've actually been able to build some operational reserves this year. And I'm curious what you see as sort of a risk around COVID for your operations, as well as potentially that wait list that's 18 to 19 families. Are you anticipating higher costs, more transitions for folks, less money coming in due to COVID, particularly going into the next year?
Well, I'll answer maybe part of that, and then Laura, if you wanted to chime in. I guess what first and foremost, what it maybe is not readily obvious from the application, In Between has recently expanded from 4 buildings to 6. And so our offerings now at 88 units have been a result of the finishing of the Micah Home project, and those were just leased up at the front end of the year. And so that's permanent supportive housing for elderly disabled. And then we also purchased in June a 10-unit apartment building on 20th and Terry. And so obviously the rationale again is sort of what we just were talking about, more inventory, affordable housing, particularly our supportive housing services. And we believe that in time, that's going to impact the wait list. And so we'll be able to bring in more people. We just have more offerings of our own. So that's a little bit of it's kind of something to know. But yes, so with that, our budget has expanded, and we now have 6 buildings that we need to maintain and service. And so that's to be expected. We have more. But because of that, we have really made a concerted effort to understand that we need to have adequate reserves when things need to be done on capital projects. And so, yes, we have expanded our operational and capital reserves. We have a sizable amount we have set aside $60,000 for the building at the new building we acquired, as well as the Micah Home has, I believe, about 20,000 in the reserves there. And so we wanted to set that up so that we were less dependent on, we did reach out and were recipients of a CDBG grant for a significant rehabilitation project this year as well, among everything else going on. So, and we did some energy improvements through a grant from Energy Outreach Colorado. But really, when we did all those things together, we understood that as we expand and grow, we need to also be, financially or fiscally prudent and make sure that we have adequate reserves to function as well, for our general operating, but as well as the maintaining of the building. So, but if you wanted, Laura, to mention a thing as it relates to COVID or, going forward, any concerns around funding, I think, you probably could better speak to that.
Yeah, sure. Presently, even with our expansion, of building the Micah homes and buying the new building, we are at full capacity. So, we do anticipate being able to help more people at some point with the new building, like Tim said, but, we are at full capacity. So right now our focus, especially with COVID, is continuing to stabilize the people who live with us, and we're highly impacted by job loss. Many of them are in the service industries and did lose their jobs and were not qualifying for unemployment. So, we set to work right away applying for whatever we could in terms of funding to help with that, to stabilize them and keep them on the right trajectory. We provided by getting funding, we're able to provide subsidies for their rent in the amount of roughly $21,000 right now. And the requests are still coming in, and we are concerned about continued needs for them because there's an uptick here in Colorado. So we don't believe that those rent subsidies are going to go away anytime soon. So we received a $25,000 grant right off the bat from the state of Colorado, Rapid Response, which allowed us to be able to respond to the residents to keep them stable and consequently keep the agency stable. We stepped up our cleaning efforts because we do have vulnerable populations living with us. So that cost us roughly $12,000 just to keep the laundry rooms and community areas clean and to reduce the number of people who might get sick. And the education center, we stepped up our efforts there with one-on-one tutoring so that the students going to an online learning atmosphere would have some support so they wouldn't fall behind. We really believe homelessness starts with childhood. So that was an area that we really stepped up on. So did I answer your question?
I think that you did, and I'm going to move us along because our time is limited. So, Madeline has her hand up. She has a question.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Yes, good morning, Tim and Laura. I am Madeline Woodley, and I'm a longtime board member of the Housing and Human Services Board. And in looking at your application, actually, my focus is gone to the board and the staff and the demographics. Specifically, I see you are projecting 230, and the clients are all Longmont clients for 2021. I'd like to know specifically what percentage of these clients are African American, and I'd also like to know what DEI provisions have you done to improve year over year in terms of inclusion.
Yeah, those are great questions, and I think they're timely, of course. It's quite low when we're talking about African American populations served. I believe our percentage was in the single digits. We had 9, I believe, and in the past year out of those. So not a great percentage. We find that about 50% of our population identify as Latinx within this area. So those are in part, I guess, too, understanding that our referring partner agencies are the ones that bring the residents to our doorstep, and so it's who they are working with and serving influences, of course, the sampling of those that are within our households at our different properties. But that the partner agency mix is always something that's fluid, and sometimes agencies come and go, and if there are opportunities for us to consider a subset or underserved group that maybe we need to reach out to, that's always something we're open to. And we once upon a time we were looking for a veterans group we felt like that was an underserved population. So again, that's kind of something we're looking at monitoring. As far as the makeup of staff and board, if you're curious, one of the things, again, that we really felt is identified and would own is that we do need to do a better job with diversity within the makeup of our board and our staff, always being cognizant of that. And so we had identified, there's been a few trainings that have come around for nonprofits lately about that and how to go about doing that. We just yesterday had a conversation with Jonathan Galindo. He's a board member of the Latino Chamber of Commerce, and we recently joined the Latino Chamber of Commerce. We felt like that was important for our agency, and so to again get connected with those that may otherwise provide an avenue for us to have more and greater diversity. So it's definitely something that we're aware of, and I know our board is also having conversations and developing a matrix too of where and how do we be representative of the community of which we serve?
Yeah, it's been a real ongoing conversation that Tim and I have been having around diversity of our staff and our board, and how we can expand our spheres of influence. And when there is a position open, particularly for either of those, that we are able to connect with people who have different backgrounds and experiences, ethnicities, and such. We did just put in place a training schedule for our staff. So 4 times a year, we'll be doing specific trainings. And one of them is on diversity, inclusion, respectful workplace training is another. And we've also asked our staff to do position-related trainings as an ongoing benefit to them and to the agency. But diversity inclusion is something that's very high on our list of things to make sure that the staff is very aware of, and that our efforts going forward in terms of leadership of the agency are including everyone.
So our alarm has sounded, but it looks like, Madeline, you have a quick follow-up. Is that correct?
I do. I just want to say I have looked year over year, and considering, I'd like to encourage you to focus on marketing and advertising, or to at least evaluate what you've done, because I'm certain that the needs, based on what my involvement is with this community, the needs are definitely there. I understand the work that you're doing, and I appreciate the work you're doing. I'd just like to see more efforts directed specifically to the African American population. I have looked at the numbers going back some years, and I don't see much of a change. So that's just encouragement. I'm willing to talk with you offline if you'd like.
Love to.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. Any expertise you might have to that end, we're welcome. That's for sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we are finished with our time. It goes fast.
Wow, that was quick. Yeah.
It does go fast, and there's someone waiting right behind you. So anyhow, we appreciate your time this morning, Tim and Laura, and we hope that you have a fabulous rest of your day and weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much, everybody.
And then if you just press the little red button at the bottom right of your screen,
Okay.
we'll wish you adieu.
Okay.
Bye.
I'm getting them now.
Okay, so next we have Safe Shelter. And Madeline, you might want to take your hand down unless you permanently want. Good morning, Jackie and Naomi. You might want to unmute yourself, Jackie. And Naomi, you might want to do the same thing and show us your face if you would like. Yeah, you think we've been doing this for what, 8 months?
I know. I still never unmute myself in a timely fashion. So thank you for the hint.
Okay, great. Well, we have 15 minutes this morning. The board members have read your proposal. They're ready to ask you questions. And before we get started, Jackie, if you and Naomi would like to introduce yourselves, and then we'll move into questions.
Good morning. I'm Jackie Liss, and I'm the Executive Director of Safe Shelter of St. Vrain Valley.
Naomi, you need to unmute.
You're muted. I don't know what's happening. I was just on the phone with her, making sure we were at the same place in the waiting room. So I don't know what's happening right now, but I can try calling.
You unmute? Well, we'll just go ahead and ask questions. And then,
okay.
Yeah. So.
Hopefully I have all the answers. So,
okay. Yeah. Hopefully that you do.
Hi, Jackie. I've got a question, and mostly born of ignorance. What is a Leichhardt scale, and how does it inform your program?
A Leichhardt scale is something you see very often where you have a 1 to 5. and 1 being least likely, 5 being most likely. You've probably seen those scales before. And it just helps us to ascertain where we might have to step it up, and where else, we need to, just that, basically. If it's not all up at the upper end, then we're looking to see why we're down in the middle or down at the bottom of that scale.
In terms of the client's experience of your program, or in terms of
Right.
your assessment of the client's safety, given what your program does?
That's all kind of rolled together.
It's rolled together.
Clients set their own course with us. We certainly are good navigators. We know what elements need to be involved in something, let's say, like safety planning. But there's a metaphor I use all the time. If the client's life were a bus, the client's at the wheel. They accelerate, they turn, they stop, they park. We have the maps. We stand next to them and have the maps. So when we look at a Leichhardt scale, we can see where we are not meeting the needs that they are setting. Or if it's in this, like in the case of safety, like with the movers document that is described in here, if they get stuck goal setting, then it's our job to walk them through that. But the Leichhardt scale just gives us a view of where they stand, where we stand in our assistance with them.
Okay, and one more follow-up to that. How long, what's the longest period of time that you might go back and measure somebody who's been served by your program?
For as long as they're with us. And we have people sometimes, well, in our public office, 2 years, sometimes even more, because domestic violence doesn't go away.
Right.
Even though they may be living independently, they may be independent in many ways. Often they'll come back for what they call a checkup, because their abuser is still being aggressive toward them in one way or another. So yeah, it just depends on the client's needs.
Okay, thank you.
So Jackie, since you did mention the movers tool, so that is new. I don't believe I have read about that. So do you want to talk a little bit about that particular tool that you're using?
Yeah, we have, if you look back at our applications, there's been quite a bit of experimentation trying to figure out the best way to sit with a client, help them set goals, help them meet those goals through the services we provide. And Movers comes out of Michigan State University. There's a researcher named Chris Sullivan. And Chris has worked for as long as I've been in the field. She's been doing research around trying to get something that will really speak to the outcomes and the successes of clients. So that is basically what Movers does. I can't read down the list. It's like a one-page document with all kinds of questions and sort of points at which you can add assistance to the client, pull assistance away. Naomi, you want to help me a little bit with this, because I think I'm floundering. I don't use the tool, but I know the domestic violence program, which is our standard keeper in the state, the people who watch us and monitor the services that we provide, we have struggled with them to try to come up with a tool statewide, and Movers has really excited the advocates, and clients are responding really well to it as well, because it really helps you set a goal, and then because you refill it out. I'm not good in the morning with words, because you utilize it every few weeks and maybe for years. You just kind of use it to see, okay, this is where we were, this is where we have gotten to. What we know about the Movers tool is that the baseline is given to clients when they first come into services. The second time they receive it, it looks as though their goal setting and their success is dipping down, because they have become more informed about their situation and about safety planning and things like that. So it dips down, and then it comes right back up again as soon as they begin to work their program and really see the success that we're planning for. Am I forgetting anything, Naomi, or any?
Naomi, you're muted. You need to unmute, please.
You're muted.
There you
I'm
are.
sorry.
Mhm.
I want to apologize. I was using remote desktop, and so it was trying to connect to my office Zoom. And
But you're here, so
I'm,
welcome.
So-
I just
Any
wanted
more
to
about movers that I
apologize.
missed?
Yeah, so it's based around what numerous focus groups have said, that the most important thing to me was to them was their safety. So the entire tool is around safety and empowerment in whatever stage they are in, whether they're still with their abuser or not, even though it kind of follows parallel to the FIPSA tools that you may have seen in the proposal as well. So it's not a complete departure, but it's a different way of assessing how survivors are feeling and their goals in terms of empowerment and safety and moving forward that way.
Okay, all right, great. Caitlin.
Hi, good morning. One thing I noticed in the application is that you didn't have information projecting demographics for 2021, but I'm wondering if you have any information on demographics that you have served so far in 2020 or even 2019 data, as far as race and ethnicity, gender identity, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, there should have been demographics in the proposal. I believe I did see it last night. But so our Latinx community has gone up consistently. It is close to 34% the last time I looked. About 3% Native American during the course of the past maybe 12 months, 2% Asian,
7% African American, from my memory.
Yeah, and there are folks that we serve whose information we do not capture. Say crisis line folks that walk into the courthouse for protection orders. And so about 54% Anglo, I believe.
Okay.
Well, if I can add something here, it is really difficult to predict even where we're going to be at the end of this year. When the pandemic hit and we had safe-at-home orders, our phones were very quiet, nearly dead, because abusers were home with the victims and with the children. And so victims could not reach out to us. And so our demographics for March, April really dipped down, or not our demographics, but our numbers. And then when the governor lifted it to safer at home, we started getting the calls, and things have really ratcheted up since then. But now already we're seeing, yesterday I checked in, I'm in quarantine, so I haven't been at work, but I checked in with staff and they said the phones were very, very, very quiet. So it's hard for us to predict this year, particularly because everything is kind of dependent on what's happening with the pandemic and what our clients are able to do in the circumstances that they're given.
So just from the numbers that you just gave us, Latinx population at 34%, 3% Native, 7% African American, that to me, it sounds like that's actually an overrepresentation of people of color in your services based on my understanding of like Boulder County demographics. But I'm curious what changes or processes you have in place that you would want to highlight for helping make sure that your staff and board match the demographics of who you're serving. Because you've sort of got an overrepresentation of people of color in your served population, but an underrepresentation on your board and staff.
True, and we are definitely working on that. Our staff is, you said it, predominantly Anglo. And we are building our Latinx advocacy team. That demographic is just the 37% is, I think, pretty much reflective of the community. So we're working always with staff to try to get people of color, people of different ages. We have that, by the way. We go from the 30s to the 70s. So we have that. We have representation from the LGBTQ community. But what we are looking for is more racial and ethnic diversity, particularly in our board. So last year, Madeline gave us a list, a suggested list of people we could contact. And the board was getting ready to do that at the first of the year, started into that. The pandemic hit and that kind of threw everybody off a little bit. We are back onto really making a strong effort to utilize the people on our board right now, utilize them and their circles of influence to try to get our board more diverse. We're very aware of that problem and we're working on it. And we will continue to work on it.
Okay, next is Deanne and then Madeline. Deanna, sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Okay. I noticed in your application that you had indicated that you turn away about 750 victims looking, domestic violence victims, survivors seeking shelter due to capacity, and another 115 who were homeless. Do you have any mechanisms for tracking to make sure that these people actually obtained other temporary safe housing? I mean, that's a pretty significant number of people in unsafe situations. So I'm just curious about your efforts with partners and whether you're tracking whether they actually get out of their abusive situations.
Okay, well, we don't do any tracking per se. One of the things that we've been able to do, thanks to pandemic money actually that's come through, we've always done this, but we've really been able to increase our ability, is to place people in, if people call us and we don't have space and the shelters around us are full, we place people in motels and advocate with them. Currently, we'll be doing that by phone, but advocate with them while they're in the motel, in the meantime, helping them try to find some place within the other shelters, or hopefully something opens up within our shelter. So that's one way. We do network with SPAN, Alternatives to Violence, Crossroads, all the Denver shelters. We are all always talking to each other and exchanging clients or recommending clients. So that's a very tight network. But that's what we've been doing. But the only things we can kind of track are the ones that we put in motels. We know what's happening with them. If they go to another program, we know they're safe there, but we don't know what happens beyond that point.
So follow up, does the 750 that you turned away in terms of numbers this year, does that 750 include people that you're sending to hotels then? Just so, like, I'm trying to figure out if they're, okay.
We've turned them away from our shelter. We haven't turned them away from services.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was trying to hear.
When they're in motels, they enter our database, and the ones that we send away are just, we don't know any of their backgrounds. But we never turn people away without giving them alternative options.
All right, great. Madeline.
Yes. First, let me commend you on at least trying to delve into a more active and result-oriented role as far as diversity. Thank you for that. I just want to extend another option for you. We now have a branch of the NAACP. We have a Boulder County branch, NAACP. The website is naacpbouldercounty.org. That would definitely be a resource that can help you. And I'm not good at putting things in the chat, but Eliberto, would you help me out in doing that? naacpbouldercounty.org, putting it in the chat, because I'm sure it'll be nice for us to share that with other clients as they come for their presentations.
Thank you.
I don't know. We have a chat function in this.
I wrote it down.
We don't have a chat in Zoom.
I have it, and I know Annette fairly well from the past. I've worked with her for many years in the past.
Very well, and that is our president, and she will definitely help you. She will do whatever it is you need help with.
That's great. Thank you.
And so
good idea.
All right.
Okay, is there one last question from the board? Because it just went off. One last question. And if not, then that is our 15 minutes. So thank you very much for spending a brief moment with us this morning, and hope you stay well. And we wish you a great rest of your weekend.
Yeah, thanks for taking
As
the
well.
time.
Thank you for your time as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. So do we have a chat function? I don't see a chat function.
I think it's disabled for these meetings.
Oh, that could be.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and meet.
Yeah.
I think Gina and Jessica are the Blue Sky Bridge folks. I'm gonna go ahead and admit them.
Uh-huh. All right, great. Good morning.
Hi.
Gina and Jessica. So welcome to your 15 minutes of fame with the Longmont Housing and Human Services Advisory Board. So it's the format is the board members have read your application. They're ready with questions, and we will get to those in just a second. But if you would like to introduce yourselves to the rest of the advisory board, and then we'll get started with Q&A.
Great. I'm Gina Mayone Earls. I'm the Executive Director at Blue Sky Bridge.
My name's Jessica Dotter. I'm the Chair of the Board of Directors at Blue Sky Bridge.
All right, great. Welcome. So who has the first question? Caitlin.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for being here. One of the things I wanted to ask about is what around the demographics of who you serve. I see demographics for your board and staff, but I see not applicable with relation to who you serve or who you have served historically. And so I'm wondering if you have data around that.
So we can identify demographic information for the bulk of, for clients that come to Blue Sky Bridge to be served directly. So for forensic interviews, family advocacy, and therapy and medical exams. But since the way we submit our data for this application is to bulk it together, it includes our school-based information. So it includes all the students that we serve at St. Vrain Valley School District, as well as parents and teachers, and that information is not available to us. So I can give you very clear information on our program of clients that we serve, but unfortunately I can't do it very carefully about students.
Can you give us a high-level overview on racial and ethnic as well as gender?
Yeah, so sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. For your direct services, the ones that you can measure.
Yeah, and I could pull exact data for you and I'd be happy to send it to you. But when I look at this data, generally speaking, it really directly compares to the demographics of our community. So you can expect that the ratio of different demographic information is going to compare to the demographics of our community pretty closely.
Okay, thank you.
Age being slightly different because we serve children and parents, so those tend to sit in certain pockets, but you get that.
Understood.
So Madeline, is your hand up for this one, or is it a carryover from the last one?
I'm sorry, it's carryover from the last one.
That's all right.
I'm Lori. It's down.
Graham.
Hi, Gina and Jessica. Do you all have a plan for the $800,000 shortfall in your budget?
I was looking at these numbers today, and that is a massive mistake. So the woman, I couldn't even reach out to figure out what the heck went wrong, because Faith Motter, who has been our director of development for the last 5 years, is no longer at Blue Sky Bridge, so I couldn't even ask what that's about. I think it's because of the way your calculator calculated the city of because if you look at the numbers, the income and expenses aren't off by that much. But I think it grabbed also the city of Longmont information in addition to show this big, massive net loss. I'm not exactly sure, but suffice it to say, we're not planning on an $800,000 operating loss.
I can tell you what, I know that table pretty well. I think what happened is that she inputted everything twice.
Oh, I apologize for that. So
Yeah.
we do generally operate on a slight deficit, and that's because we have very significant depreciation expense. And our depreciation expense is basically taking our facility and everything that's in it and depreciating it over a number of years. And that shows up as an expense item. But if we are going to do some sort of a capital project or even refurnish the building or something like that, we would go out and fundraise for that. So we don't feel it's necessary for us to hold on to those funds in terms of sort of a net income, if you will. So in general, we do operate on a slight deficit these days, but I'm very comfortable with that. Our finance committee is comfortable with that. And I honestly, I'm sure there will be a COVID question coming up here, but there's so much uncertainty right now, but we're planning for a slight deficit that basically is a cash neutral or a slightly cash positive outcome so that we can continue to build our reserves as our organization grows, because we know we need to be, but again, COVID, we need to be prepared for years like 2020 and 2021 and 2022 when there's a lot of uncertainty.
I think part of the budget question, and maybe it was on the program budget. So when I looked at how it was entered, so there was, so all of the expenses, your operating expenses for your agency were also listed under the program budget.
Yes.
And the only modification that that you made was on the staffing. So
okay.
So you just might want to look at that, because that was, I don't think that was correct.
And I'm happy to resubmit that to you if you guys want to see clearer information.
I think if you get Eliberto a corrected copy, that would be great.
Okay. And so Eliberto, we'll talk later because I'm not sure exactly how to get that to you. If you need it in this exact format, I could submit it somehow. But anyway, you and I will talk.
So the number of direct Longmont clients that basically child victims that you're serving is obviously it's not the 2,600 count. So what is the what is that number? I think I saw it in the application, but what is it?
Are you talking about offering forensic interviews too?
Correct.
So for the future year, I believe that number is right about 140 children, but I don't have that exact number, but I can dig a little bit more if you want me to.
And so what was it in the past fiscal year?
We anticipate it to be about the same. That is a very consistent number for us. Again, there could be a lot of changes. This year has been really weird in terms of how we're seeing children. We know children are stuck at home and unable to disclose what's going on with them. So there could be changes, but right now, because we don't know more than what we know, we anticipate it being a pretty consistent number. Our school numbers, so the numbers of students we serve and all of that grows considerably. But that number of forensic interviews stays about the same.
Right. Okay, Karen. And you're on mute, Karen.
Sorry, thanks for being here. I noticed that a lot of your clients are in the 18 to 54-year-old range, and how do you help those people?
Those are parents.
So
those are parents that, yeah. So when children come to Blue Sky Bridge for a forensic interview, we simultaneously provide family support services to their non-offending caregivers, and that is really ultimately a direct service for those children, but it supports the entire family system so that those caregivers know how to support their child to help their child move forward towards healing. We are giving access to resources and therapy services and all of that stuff to the entire family.
And then I wasn't clear on how do you improve your program outcomes based on your evaluations? I wasn't kind of clear.
I'm sorry, can you ask the question one more time?
How do you improve your program outcomes based on your evaluations?
How do we improve? So how do we how do we make changes to improve our programs based on what we hear in the evaluations? Oh yeah.
How do you use your evaluation data to improve your program?
Yeah. So we constantly are we send countless surveys to our partners in law enforcement and human services and the DA's office, as well as to parents. Again, this is specifically for our CAP program, which is the Forensic Interviewing and Family Support Program. So we send a lot of surveys out. We also have a lot of conversations with all of these people. And when we get data points in that we can, we're constantly evolving our program to be more responsive to the needs of our community. So our program, although it is, the way we interview children stays really consistent, unless research tells us to change things. How we provide our services, how our flow through the building is. We've made tons of changes during COVID to be responsive to that based on the feedback we're getting from families. So we take that information on a pretty regular basis, about every month, but it's more realistically every couple of months. We pull up that data and really look at it. But if we hear something directly, we're just constantly making changes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alberto.
So, hey, Gina, at our last, at our site visit, it was Shakita and I, and we talked about, the board representation, diversity on the board. And I read in your application that you actually dedicated a whole meeting to it. And I'm just wondering, maybe what has come out of it. Maybe the question's for Jessica more than you. What has the board, what came out of that meeting? Is there any type of plan or, work plan to make changes?
Yeah, I can answer that. So it was actually our annual retreat that we spent the entire meeting on board development, and specifically when it came to increasing the diversity and the cultural representation of our board. We definitely recognize, and I think we always have, that that's an important part, especially because we have a diverse community across the Boulder County, Longmont and Boulder and Lafayette and Louisville and all these different demographics. And so out of that meeting, we put in an action plan where we created a board development packet that really described what Blue Sky Bridge did, really put the values and different characteristics of board members that we were seeking together to engage in more of an active recruitment. And our big emphasis was to get outside of our normal networks and circles. And we've reached out to and posted that board packet, made it available to the Longmont Chamber, the Latino Chamber, the Longmont Community Foundation, also Boulder Chamber, as well as posting it to our various LinkedIn networks in an attempt to try to just get a really broad outreach to people with different backgrounds that we are, maybe connected to through work or social. So far, we are still in the process of selecting a list of people to interview. We have a number of potential qualified board members, but we're really hammering in on focus to get some more cultural representation. And so we're actually going to end up turning down some potential, I think, applicants or potential members, just because we want to be really selective and increase that diversity in our board. So that's been, not only was the focus of the annual retreat, but then our last board meeting focused in on the efforts of board members to increase that board development. And then actually we have our next board meeting next week, and Gina and I met yesterday to talk about how we would check in with what the different efforts have been of the other members, as on top of Gina and I think putting a lot of work into it.
Please put the word out for us. Please help us. Please put the word out. If you know people, if you want to introduce us to people that might know other people, we need to get out of our own way. And so anything you can do to help us. I ask you guys this every year.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
So now, Madeline, your hand is up.
Yep. I just wanted to ask, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm muted? Oh, you can't hear me. Okay.
We can hear you.
I just wanted to ask, okay, I wanted to ask, you mentioned qualified for board candidates. What does that mean? What does it require?
So it's more in sort of qualifications of personality characteristics, right? A good work ethic, dedication, and commitment obviously a passion for our cause for ending child abuse and child sexual assault. I not so much qualifications in terms of like job or education or anything like that, but really more personality characteristics that would provide a board member who can come in, bring different perspectives to the board and creativity, and first and foremost has commitment. You know, we're constantly ensuring that our board members are engaged and that they're committed to actively being involved. And, you know, a lot of them are donors, but a lot of them also are able to end up volunteering their time. And we would search really for people who have that ability to dedicate.
Got it. Got it. And I spoke with Shakita, and I have spoken about this in depth as recent as yesterday. And one of the people of the agencies or the organizations that I heard you mention, I did not hear you mention the NAACP Boulder Branch. And there is a Boulder Branch NAACP now, President Annette James. And we are about 600 members strong at this point. So if you'd like our assistance, we'd be more than happy to help you. NAACPBoulderCounty.org.
That would be
Awesome.
fantastic.
Thanks.
And I'll reach out directly, or Jessica can. But if you felt inspired to make a personal connection for us to Annette James, that would be fantastic.
Not a problem.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Amazing. That'd be perfect.
Other questions?
I'll go.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm curious, because you're the only agency that provides these services, I think, from your application in the county, if you're able to serve everybody that needs your services, or if you're turning anybody away, or if you're sending them out of county to maybe, I don't know, somewhere in Denver, et cetera. And then I'm also curious if you're seeing different outcomes in interviews due to COVID safety restrictions. I would imagine that wearing masks might be discouraging maybe to kids who are trying to open up about something just incredibly traumatic that's happened to them. So those are sort of two different questions. So thanks.
I wish I had another 20 minutes to talk to you about this, because there's a lot to say. Sorry, what was the first question? On the COVID question, I can go there, but what was the first part?
Yeah, my first question is just if you're able to serve everybody that needs your services.
So yes, the answer to that is yes, sort of. The biggest hurdle we have to serving everybody that needs our support is children disclosing or adults having, concern about a child. We know that 9 out of 10 kids that need our services don't make it to Blue Sky Bridge, don't make it anywhere. They're still stuck in unsafe situations. So that's our biggest hurdle. But in terms of any reports that are made to Human Services or the DA's office, we are able to serve every child that needs a forensic interview and every family that needs family advocacy. We do send some potential therapy clients to other therapists in Boulder County, but we don't send those out of county unless somebody happens to live out of county and needs something closer to home. As for COVID, we actually feel really, really good about the services we're providing right now. We provide what's called a teleforensic interview, and we also do our family support virtually with Zoom. And so it really enables, children are so comfortable with computers and speaking this way. So kids can take off their masks. They're in their building, but from one room to another where the interviewer is in one room and the child is in a different room and they're speaking over Zoom. Same thing with the advocate and the family member. They're speaking over Zoom as well. And so kids really have this very comfortable ability to build rapport with our interviewer. I mean, it's not as ideal as being in the same room with no masks on, but what we really didn't want to see happen is doing all of our interviews in a room with masks on. We do sometimes, especially with very young children, or when there needs to be evidence introduced or things like that. But for the most part, we're doing teleforensic interviews and it's going really, really well. I mean, Jessica, as a prosecutor with the district attorney's office, is that your perspective?
It is. We're really happy to work with, I wear that dual hat of being a district attorney in the sex assault unit and the board chair. But on the district attorney side, we worked with our forensic interviewers and had them gather kind of the most up-to-date research and best practices regarding doing virtual interviews, and made sure that we were all aligned as a multidisciplinary team with how that would work and making sure that it would be admissible in court later. Obviously, number one is care for the child, and a secondary aspect is, of course, useful as a tool in the criminal investigation side. And so far, so good. We have not had any problems or cases that we've had to, evaluate differently because of the virtual aspect. And I've heard nothing but good things from families feeling comfortable.
And in fact, Blue Sky Bridge is really a pioneer in this teleforensic interview world. And there are some other centers around the country that are doing it as well, but we are going to be contributing to some research that's going to be happening on teleforensic interviews, and we're very proud of that.
So I believe we are at our time, unless someone is dying to ask the last question. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Gina and Jessica, and have a great rest of your day and continue to be safe and well out there.
Thanks. Same to all of
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Nice seeing you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Karen, thanks for helping me with my question.
Your question was fine. So.
I think next is Colorado Legal Service.
Boulder County Legal Services.
Right. So I'm going to go ahead and admit them.
Okay. Are you going to rename the laptop?
Once I know who it is, yes.
Hi.
Oh, hello to everyone.
Hello.
So who is the laptop?
Hi. Yes. This is Brett Landis. I'm the managing attorney for Boulder County Legal Services.
Okay, I'm just going to rename
you. Eliberto will rename you.
Oh, okay. That works.
And let me know if I misspell your name, but I think I got it.
Yep, perfect.
All right, Kelly. And so, John, we get to see you in real life now that we're all Zooming.
Yeah.
That's great. It's been a while, Karen. How are you?
It has been, and we're still here.
Good.
You and me. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So we have 15 minutes. Our advisory board has reviewed your application. They're dying to ask you questions. We will do that for 15 minutes, and we will start after you all give us a brief introduction of who you are and your role with the agency.
Is Kelly on yet?
Yes, you have. And Kelly, you might want to unmute, please.
Okay. Karen,
that's the standard question.
Well,
so we have Kelly and Brett and John. So you want to introduce yourselves?
well, let me start. I'm John Asher, and I am Executive Director of Colorado Legal Services. And it's a pleasure to be with you this morning, and I will be glad to answer questions or provide a brief overview of the history of BCLS if that would be helpful.
Hi, I'm Brett Landis. I have been managing attorney with the Boulder, Colorado Legal Services office since September of 2016. So I just had my 4-year anniversary, and I oversee a lot of our day-to-day operations, as well as take on my own caseload, help with dispositioning cases.
Great. Kelly?
Hi, my name is Kelly Cuevas, and I am the Pro Bono Coordinator at Boulder County Legal Services. I just really started my position at the first of the year, so it's been a bit of a wild ride. But I serve as somewhat of as a liaison between clients and attorneys, getting them connected, and I tend to run the volunteer part of the program.
All right, great. Okay. Clock is ticking. Advisory board members. Ram.
Yeah, I'll start. It's my impression that, well, I read in your application, 30% roughly of your work is in eviction stuff. And it's my impression that there's a bubble, right? And maybe that's false, but are y'all strategizing about how to deal with that when it
We
pops?
are. We are. I certainly have been working very hard on a lot of community work in these past few months. I'm part of a housing retention group along with County DHHS, City of Boulder and City of Longmont mediation programs, and the DA's Community Protection Unit. And we've been working on strategizing just in a very holistic way, ways to make the eviction tsunami less of a tsunami and more of an increased flow. We are also looking at other strategies. We have a number of volunteer attorneys who do help with that work. But a lot of that stuff really is going to be coming straight to our front door in the months to come.
So what is your strategy?
So, I think one of the big things that we've been working on is preparation in terms of encouraging cases to resolve before the crisis hits, to use this period of time where there's both a state moratorium as well as a federal moratorium to really encourage people to come up with plans, to work it out, utilize the free mediation services. I've tried to make it a little easier to reach our office for advice. So Friday mornings, which is when eviction court is, I've kind of reserved that time to be on call so that if the mediators can flag cases that need legal advice, we can reach out to that. We do have our regular systems in place still for people who are planning ahead a little. Our coordinated statewide intake, for a lot of cases, people can call in and get advice the same day from the attorney of the day, who's one of the Colorado Legal Services attorneys all across the state. Additionally, I've been trying to keep as close tabs as I can to what's been happening on a statewide level. Within CLS, we do have a housing task force that's been very, very active and led by some of our senior housing attorneys. So it's been a nice way to kind of get the global view of what's going on and figure out how that's going to apply to our local cases. So it's been really, really useful and really helpful. I will say one of the challenges with evictions has been that the law keeps changing about every 2 weeks right now. So having that wider resource is really important in making sure that I am up to date on what the law is and how to advise clients.
And we've been very involved in providing the factual background for other advocates to deal with Governor Polis in the implementation of his moratoriums over the past 8 months now. So we both provide actual representation in Boulder County and throughout the state, but have tried to provide the background information to inform statewide decisions on the eviction crisis as well. But we're also seeing, given the moratorium, we're seeing a spike in cases involving foreclosures. We're seeing an increase in denials or termination of unemployment comp benefits and other public benefits, an increase in collections, and domestic violence, unfortunately, is increasing as well. So we are seeing more eligible clients in Boulder County and throughout the state than we ever have. At the same time, they're facing more civil legal problems than ever.
Okay. Caitlin, you had a question, and then Karen.
Yes, I was curious about how many potential clients at this point you are having to turn away, and what are some of the reasons that you might not be able to serve someone in our community?
So probably I'm going to start with the last part of your question first. Probably the biggest reason that we are having to turn people away is because of a lack of resources. We are a fairly small Colorado Legal Services office. I am the only attorney on staff, and everything else is done through volunteer attorneys, as well as a small panel of attorneys that we contract with for below market rate. Right now, I think we are definitely seeing all of, not just our own resources kind of stretched thin, but a lot of our volunteers are also small business owners. Most attorneys who work in small or solo practice firms are also running a small business, and they're hit with all the same struggles that other small business owners are hit with. So we are having fewer availability of those volunteer resources than we normally would. Our contract panel is still going pretty strong, but as John mentioned, we've been seeing a real increase in domestic violence cases. And I would say not even just an increase in numbers, but an increase in severity. So the cases are more difficult, more time consuming, and the clients, by and large, are dealing with more trauma. Our clients who have behavioral or emotional health disabilities, those clients, their symptoms are exacerbated by everything that's been going on. So the cases are getting harder. So I think that is probably our biggest restriction, is how to serve the increased needs of individuals with fewer resources, which is, I think, the golden question for nonprofits. That being said, we do work really hard to limit flat no's to people. We have a number of innovative programs. Again, having the ability to give people brief advice. The idea is that some help is better than no help. So working on doing that. For our family law cases, Kelly actually mentioned this very briefly in her introduction, but we have a pro se clinic to basically guide people, give them help with their forms, give them help with strategies and questions that come up, but not provide direct representation in court on those cases. And that's a really efficient program. And I have to say, I'm so proud of the way that we have been able to convert that. And Kelly really deserves much of the credit for turning that into a virtual program. And I think it's been even more popular virtually than it was in person. But we've got ways to provide some assistance rather than no. And even for cases that aren't eligible, our secretary has a whole list of community resources and other organizations to send people to.
And let me just add two quick things. One, I would encourage all of you to look at our website at coloradolegalservices.org and see the variety of self-help and information now tailored to COVID and the pandemic to try to assist not only eligible clients, but the public at large who need legal information. And I have not checked since July 1 in the new budget, but in the last fiscal year, we had increased statewide. We have 58 lawyers serving, at that point, 800,000 eligible clients. The state of Colorado funds 535 public defenders to meet the criminal needs of essentially the same potential client population. So because there's no right to a lawyer in civil cases, it sometimes feels like we're trying to empty the ocean with the teaspoon. We just know it's the right and an important ocean.
All right, Karen.
I just had a question. Do you happen to have a physical office in Longmont?
We do not. Our physical office right now is in Louisville. We've discussed, actually, we were discussing it right before the shutdown, some alternate locations. And that got a little derailed over the past few months. you know, we do have some volunteers in normal times who would do intakes in Longmont. Right now, because everything is over the phone, the physical office location has been a little less important over the past 8 months, but it is something that's still on my radar, considering the very high percentage of our clients who live in Longmont.
Okay, thank you.
Just
If I might-
a touch under a half of our Boulder County clients are from Longmont.
And
Kelly,
if I
did you
may
want to add?
just say, yeah, I would just like to add that ever since COVID and we had to transition to doing things over the phone or in a virtual format, that has reduced a lot of the barriers for our Longmont clients to receive those services. And people are keeping their appointments more often, and they're more active and involved with us. And so that is the one silver lining of COVID and transitioning to an over-the-phone or virtual model, is that there are far less transportation barriers. People don't have to find childcare to come to their appointment and things like that. And so that has been one real positive, I think, all across the board to the horror of COVID.
You know, and that was one of the things I was going to ask. Because of that, as you are planning for, we all are planning for one day, we nip this nasty virus in the bud. So do you imagine that you're going to carry forward some of these virtual strategies?
I love it.
Yeah.
And absolutely, let me say that we are mobilizing a core of Denver metro areas to remotely serve rural areas of Colorado, which have always been a challenge. That will continue. I'd like to think that those courts that have transitioned to remote access have found higher appearance rates. More people are attending return dates because they don't need to leave work for as longer of childcare. It's my hope that we will also work with the judiciary to maintain some of the benefits we've found over the last 8 months in how to better serve litigants and the consumers of a need for court services as well as legal services. So I think the innovations that have been in response to the pandemic, hopefully the best of them will continue both in our service, but also in court procedures as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Madeline, is your hand up or down? Up? Leftover? Leftover
No,
hand.
it's up.
It's up. All right. Go, Madeline.
No, yeah. I just wanted to confirm what I think I see of 27 board members. Is that correct?
That is correct. And while the size is not determined by the Legal Services Corporation and our federal appropriation, which is 40%, we have very little control over the structure of our board. Over half of our board have to be lawyers appointed by state, county, or municipal bar associations. 60% of our board have to be lawyers in the state. So we add a Sam Carey board member, a Colorado Women's Bar. Sam Carey is the African American Bar Association, and one representative from the Colorado Hispanic Bar, and a third of our board have to be individuals who are eligible for our service. They don't have to be current clients, but they have to be eligible to be served at the time of appointment. We have always had a client eligible board member from Boulder County, as well as a lawyer from Boulder County on the board. Sometimes from Longmont, sometimes from the city of Boulder or Louisville, that varies, but that's how, but the structure is determined by our receipt of the federal appropriation through the Legal Services Corporation.
Understood. I just want, I looked at your outcomes. Your outcomes have been successful. I think one of the things that I saw that I haven't seen is some, I think it said a couple are appointed by the community.
Is that
well,
right?
those are the client eligible board member in Boulder County, for example, is appointed by the Area Agency on Aging. Being a statewide program, we want racial diversity, gender diversity, geographic diversity, age diversity, and that's always been a challenge. But we have board members, client eligible board members from Grand Junction, Durango, Alamosa, Boulder, Loveland, scattered, Denver, scattered all over the state. So
I'm
Zoom
encouraged.
meeting.
I'm encouraged by your results.
Thank you.
I'm encouraged by what I see in your numbers. Congratulations.
Thank you
But we
very
can
much.
do
Keep up the
better.
good work.
Okay, so we our alarm went off. So we have completed our 15 minutes, and unless someone has anything they're dying to ask, then we are going to thank you for spending time with us this morning, and we appreciate what you're doing, and we hope that you stay well and safe, and that you're able to carry forward some of the, some of the virtual options that are really helping to increase
Absolutely.
access to clients.
And it's good to see you, Karen.
It's good to
been
see
a
you.
long time.
One of these
Thank
days
you.
we're going to retire, John.
Not till I get it right.
Okay. We
Thank
might be
you
here
so
for a
much.
long time if that's the
Yeah.
case.
That's
All
true.
right.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great
Thank
weekend.
you so much. We really love
Thanks.
this opportunity.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
So next is the Boulder Immigrant Legal Center, and I'm going to let Laurel and her crew in.
And Polly's in now. You want to let her in?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
We're good. And you?
Doing good.
Okay, great. Well, welcome. This is your 15 minutes with the Human Services, Housing and Human Services Advisory Board. Advisory Board members have reviewed your application. They are ready with questions. They will pepper you with questions for 15 minutes, and we will be then we will be finished. So before we get started with the questions, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves and your role with the agency, and then we'll turn it over to the advisory board.
Okay. I'm not sure if I can't see who's connected, but I
So
think we're
it's Laurel and is it Belen?
Belen. Yeah, I'm Belen.
Belen. Okay. All right.
Well, my name is Belen Parga Solis. I am the accredited representative at the Immigrant Legal Center.
Oops. And Laurel?
And I'm Laurel Herndon, the executive director at the Immigrant Legal Center.
All right, great. So who has the first question?
Madeline has her hand up.
So Madeline, do you have a question? Or is that left over from the last one? And you're mute, Madeline. Okay. So Madeline doesn't have a question yet. Okay. All right, Deanna.
So I'm just curious about how your organization assists people with some tandem legal issues that may arise for clients. Like, do you have partners that you work with for additional issues that come up, housing disputes, wage disputes, et cetera? Do you refer people out just to see if they're getting like a holistic approach to their needs in addition to the services that you provide, how you help with that process?
Sure. We've been doing this for about 15 years now. We've developed relationships with Toward Justice. There are so many people in this area that are not being treated appropriately in their employment situation. We regularly refer people to Colorado Legal Services for immigrants and families of immigrants. CLS has in Denver an expertise in people that are having trouble getting passports. Because the US government is challenging the actual citizenship status of many people who were born in the Texas area. We work directly with the district attorney's office. We just this week referred a family to the Consumer Affairs Division at the district attorney's office because of a loan dispute by a U.S. citizen who borrowed money from someone is not now paying that back. So we're trying to figure out how to connect them with someone who will help them with a small claims issue, since that's not something Colorado Legal Services would be able to work on. We also have a lot of overlap with Colorado Legal Services on Social Security type issues and housing issues. They're really the experts in this area. So we've been connecting also with criminal defense attorneys. We've worked with a lot of different criminal defense attorneys over the years because that becomes so important, particularly for young people who have Daca status. They can lose that so easily. So we work very closely with the public defender's office and have been able to help a lot of people avoid problems that would come up through local issues that become much more complicated in the immigration setting.
Caitlin.
Hi, good morning. One of the things I noticed in your logic model was around at least 95% of immigrant applications being successful. I'm curious, number one, roughly the number that you file on an annual basis and what the historical success rate of those has been.
I don't have a number of how many we file on an annual basis because it depends on the administration, on opportunities that are being offered. What I can tell you is we currently have 160 Longmont Daca recipients that we work with on a regular basis. They're renewing their applications every couple of years. Belen, do you have can you give an estimate? I'm envisioning my board. We have, sort of like the baseball scoreboard of how many applications are outstanding. So I-90 applications, one of our biggest needs, particularly for Longmont residents. Every 10 years, permanent residents have to renew their cards. And we may at one time be working through anywhere from 15 to 40 I-90 applications, depending on how quick the government is working. We just yesterday got a renewed card for a Longmont 29-year-old. We filed that application in June of 2019, so that took 18 months. So there are just so many different variables in the federal government processing, particularly with the Trump administration. My best guess would be we probably file 300 a year of all the different application types. And yes, we have a 95% approval rating. It's more like 99% for our DACAs.
Great, thank you so much.
Deanna, sorry.
No, I'll go again, as long as I'm not hogging it from anybody else.
You're not hogging yet.
Okay, I'm just curious if you have had to sort of undergo like 2 strategic plans based on the outcome of the federal election, and if you foresee, based on this election results, whether you're going to have more work because there may be more opportunity for, like, say, DACA program, or if you're going to have less work. Does that make sense, what I'm wondering?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. We update our strategic plan more like weekly. because so many things have changed during this administration. New regulations coming down. There are hundreds of changes to immigration that the Trump administration made. So with regard to DACA, the upcoming opportunities for immigrants are spectacular. We are looking right now at youth and young adults that were born 2002, 3, 4, and 5 who have been blocked out of the DACA process. And we suspect that starting January 21st, new DACA applications are going to be accepted by this group of people that have been blocked out. And we're talking 15 to 18-year-olds who do not currently have lawful ways to be employed in the economy. And that is going to completely change. You know, assuming that upcoming President Biden is true to his word, he said he's going to reinstate the DACA program as it was initially ordered, which means they're going to start accepting new DACA applications, and it applies to people 15 years and older. So that's a really critical group of high school students and recent graduates who are going to be able to apply for DACA. And I should let Belen talk because she's in the process of working with upcoming candidates who are already getting their documents ready.
Yeah, so like Laurel said, we are anticipating that the DACA program will go back to how like its original, like the original program. So we do have right now about, I want to say 10 to 15 files in our office that are waiting for the program to reopen. So it'll be their first time applying. So basically they have already come up with a lot of the documents that are needed for their initial application. We're just really waiting to be able to fill out the form, which we'll probably know will change a bit. And then their documents there, we're ready to organize them. And then another thing I did want to mention regarding DACA is we are thinking that the advanced parole program will also come back. And so that is going to help not only maybe initial applicants, but also DACA recipients who didn't get the chance to travel with permission to their home country to have that opportunity. We're probably going to get a lot of those applications as well, not just from initial DACAs, but from DACAs who weren't able to do so in the last time it was opened.
Thank you.
So other questions? So I do have a very exciting financial question. Sorry, Laurel. So so it looks like at least the past couple of years that the agency has been operating on a bit of a deficit, like about a 20,000 deficit, operating deficit per year. So what's the plan to kind of turn that around, or how have you been impacted by COVID in terms of resources?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember back to June 30th. So many things have happened since then. I'm not thinking that we had a big deficit this year. The prior
maybe
year,
it's your depreciation costs. I'm not sure, but it just looks like it shows up that way.
Okay.
So I wondered
Sure.
So maybe talk just a little bit about your financials.
We had added an additional accredited representative back, I think it was 2017 or 2018. And it turned out that we were not able to meet the needs of that individual. We were trying to help him find employment in mainland United States. He's from Puerto Rico. He decided to go back to Puerto Rico. I think was a great decision. He's supporting family members in a really important way there. So we were trying to dig out, and we have been really successful at getting back on track after that one fiscal year that was a problem. We were able to leverage PPP funding, and so right now we're right on track as far as our budget goes.
Okay, great. Karen.
What is PPP funding?
Oh.
I don't.
Oh, from the CARES Act, the Federal CARES Act that authorized funding for
payroll protection. It's called Payroll Protection Plan.
Right.
So yeah. So business could apply to get assistance in meeting their payroll.
So we received $30,000 in payroll protection plan money. We used all of that for staff. We maintained staff. There was no change, with the exception of a part-time intern who has now started law school and was not planning on working beyond the summer.
So any other questions? So maybe Bilan, Bilan, I can't pronounce your name very well, Bilan, if you would talk a little bit about your, kind of your role with Immigrant Legal Center. So what is it that you kind of do on a daily basis? How you're assisting folks that are coming through immigrant legal services?
Yeah. So I actually started off as the office manager at the Immigrant Legal Center, and in October of 2017, I applied for accreditation with the Department of Justice. Mm-hmm. So now I get to do consultations with mostly only Spanish-speaking clients. And I'm able to do the consultation, help them throughout their case. And then any questions that I have, I go to Laurel, but mostly I just get that interaction with the community members who aren't too comfortable speaking English or would rather have their consultation just be Spanish. Mm-hmm. So I mostly get to talk to people from the community. Mostly Longmont and Boulder are the ones that have Spanish-speaking only clients that want to go ahead and see what their options are. So for the most part, I work with consultations, and then the next biggest thing would be our Daca recipients. And then lately, the two other big groups I've been working with are the renewals for their green card. So after 10 years, they get to renew again. So I've been doing a lot of those. And then the other type of cases that I've been working with are couples who recently got their residency that only get a residency card for 2 years. They have to what is called remove their conditions to get a 10-year card, a 10-year green card. So I'm helping out a lot with that. And then I also work a lot with the National Visa Center, mostly in Mexico, but I do work with some other countries, helping clients do the second part of, like, if they have to have their interview in their home country, or they are petitioning for family members who are in their home country, they have an interview at the embassy or consulate. And so I help with that part as well.
Great. Alberto.
Laurel, this question is less about your application and more about the current realities and seeing where you all fit in that. So I guess my curiosity is, what we've been hearing from our basic need agencies throughout the county is some of the most hard impacted populations in our community are immigrants, and in particular those that are undocumented. So I was just wondering what, if any, what role you've been playing in trying to those populations.
So I've taken on the role of accomplice on what is the booming Repeal 2006 coalition, trying to get rid of state laws that currently block individuals from getting licenses at the state and local level. It affects licenses, contracts, a number of other things, most important being the childcare licenses. There's an enormous friends and family childcare network. Colorado Statewide Parent Coalition is training them, but they can't currently be licensed. That would be an enormous boom to the economy, both for the people that can now have businesses that are licensed, but also in the ability for primarily Spanish-speaking essential workers to have dependable childcare while they're at work. So that's probably that state effort to get repeal is probably the single most important thing that's going on right now.
Okay, so we had our 15-minute beeper went off, and so so we have finished. We have closed out our time with representatives from the Immigrant Legal Center. So we thank you very much for joining us this morning, Laurel and Bilan, and so we thank you for your time. We hope you have a great weekend and that you stay safe out there and healthy.
Thanks, Karen.
So thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
So we have Voices for Children next.
And we have 30 minutes with them because they applied for 2 programs. So in the past, we've kind of put everyone in a 15-minute bucket, and if you had more than one program, then we didn't have a lot of time. So we actually got that right this year.
So I will be admitting them now.
Okay.
Give me a second. Admit. There she comes. So probably want to let them know about the time and all that and the facts. Okay.
Hi, Aliberto and company.
Hi, Dana. Are you the only one, or is anyone else joining you?
I am the only one from Boulder Voices for Children. So
Okay. All right.
there may be others in this time slot, but.
No, it's you. It's your time
Okay,
slot.
great.
So,
Okay.
so,
Terrific.
So because you have, because Voices for Children, Boulder Voices for Children has applied for 2 programs.
Sure.
You have a 30-minute slot.
Okay.
And so for the advisory board, if you, so again, there are 2 programs. There's the Strengthening Family program and the CASA program. And so I think we'll just make this a free-for-all. So any questions that you might have about either program, please go ahead and ask. Whoopsie, stop. So please go ahead and ask Dana anything that you want to ask her. So I will set the timer right after we do introductions. So Dana, if you can introduce yourself to the board members and let us know your role with the agency, we will then start questions.
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Dana Walters. I know some of you. I am the director of the CASA programs here at Boulder Voices for Children. And that encompasses, at this point, 3 separate programs. One that serves about 200 children on dependency and neglect cases, meaning we match up a CASA volunteer who's court appointed to work one-on-one with a kid who's been a victim of child abuse or neglect, who may be going through the foster care system in Boulder County. The majority of those cases stem from Longmont. The original incident happened in Longmont. We also, since January of last year, served 10 kids who have come into contact with law enforcement. These are a lot of the Longmont auto theft cases, right? Like the 12 and 13-year-old kids who've just kind of had that first or second contact with law enforcement, and they're starting to get drawn into that kind of pipeline. And the juvenile court appoints a CASA volunteer to serve as a mentor advocate, to make best interest recommendations, and really to try and prevent them from recidivating, right? To try and connect them to some like positive social outlets, to get them into some healthy risk taking, like maybe like climbing or hiking or whitewater rafting, right? Something they can brag to their friends about that feels exciting to a 13-year-old, but isn't as dangerous as stealing a car. And then we also take education referrals from St. Vrain Valley School District and Boulder Valley School District, 10 per school district per year, for kids who have become disconnected from school, either due to school pushout, suspension and expulsion, just family crisis that doesn't rise to the level of a child welfare case, but a family that might really be struggling and on the brink of homelessness. And then we, in addition to that, we have the Strengthening Families program, which is our newest program. And that began this year. And that, I think you guys know, we took over from Children's First of the Rockies.
So I'm gonna ask you to wrap up your introduction because it's going on for a while. so
sure, I wasn't sure whether you guys
that's
needed
right. I'm
that
sorry.
context.
I was not clear, and I'm sure we'll have questions about you know, the program that you have taken on from Children First of the Rockies. So.
Oh, sure, no problem.
All right, great, thank you. So so now it's time for questions from the advisory board. So Eliberto, did you have one?
I had one general one. I'm sure the board had more, but because I've not had a chance to talk to Jacob as in depth as I would like, and you may not be able to answer me. This may be much more of a Jacob question.
Sure.
But I would love to know what was the trigger. I mean, I knew that Children First of the Rockies were in trouble, but what was the trigger to say, "Oh, CASA, take on this multi-$100,000 program"?
Oh yeah.
Because I think you had talked about it before, and then
sure.
it went off the plate, then it was on the plate. So yeah, so maybe talk about the story.
Yeah, I do definitely know the answer to that one. And the answer is that we had been looking, Boulder Voices for Children had been looking for several years really for property to buy, which as you guys know is a tough row to hoe in Boulder County, but we wanted there to be kind of a safe and permanent home to our programming that would permit us ideally to be able to build out some trauma-informed spaces, right, to utilize some trauma-informed design, to have spaces. Initially, we were thinking for CASA volunteers to be able to bring the kids that they serve and interact. And then ultimately, we were hoping to have space for parents to come and visit with their kids on those child welfare cases. And when we heard what the need was to do supervised visitation and exchange on domestic relations cases, which is what Children's First of the Rockies was doing primarily, and we went and looked at their space, it was a little bit depressing. They had not had the opportunity to really build it out or design it in a way that made it like inviting or comfortable for families and kids. And we found a building that was priced really well. We closed in April of this year, which was an exciting time to be closing on property and moving. But once we owned that building, right, it's a big, beautiful space. It looks like a house. And Eliberto, once we were able to kind of design those spaces for visitation, and the infrastructure is perfect for the security needs of a program like Strengthening Families. So it's both safe, and we had the opportunity to kind of make it the most inviting and trauma-informed and comfortable space it could possibly be. And then it became kind of a no-brainer because it can both be utilized for Strengthening Families. It may be something that DHHS will be able to utilize in the future to provide a little bit more visitation, like to grandparents on child welfare cases. And our CASAs can use those visitation spaces, you know, because there's a lot of time that they're not scheduled for a Strengthening Families visit. So that made the decision to acquire Children's First of the Rockies a lot, it just made it seem like the right thing to do at that point in time once we knew we were going to have that building.
Great. Caitlin, and then Graham.
Hi, Dana. Good morning. Good to see you.
Hi, good morning. Good to see you.
I noticed in the budget information for expenses and so forth that there's a small shortfall that you've projected for 2021. I wonder if you could explain a little bit about that and sort of the changes with COVID in particular in terms of fundraising as well as the services you're providing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know that the shortfall will happen, but we like to be as conservative as possible in our projections, right? So a little bit of a shortfall because in part, our two annual fundraisers are both typically in-person fundraisers, right? And like all nonprofits, we had to be creative about converting those into online spaces. And one of the two, one was sort of wildly successful, and the second one was less successful than we would have liked because it was sort of predicated on two restaurants being able to participate and provide food for like a takeout, order your own food, go home and watch a program about our work kind of evening. And both restaurants got kind of shut down because of COVID the day of the event, hours before the event was scheduled to take place. So we had to sort of hustle and make it work, and we did, but we didn't raise as much as we had hoped. That being said, the thing that has turned out to be a little better than we were expecting, right, is that the Strengthening Families program is not only booked, but on a wait list, right? We have 50 families that are waiting to sign up for that option, right? To use those spaces, to do supervised exchange and visitation. I think people have been responding really well to the model that we've implemented, which is that we actually have clinicians who are providing a little bit of feedback to kids and parents about how those visits are going, right? In particular, like positive feedback and encouragement, with the hopes of being able to sort of graduate families out of that space where they would no longer need to do supervised exchange and they would no longer need visitation to be supervised. Children's First of the Rockies really did not have that capacity. They didn't have clinical staff. They didn't have full-time folks working, doing that monitoring. All they could really do was just record what was happening in the visit, but they couldn't actually really interact with the clients, which made it really hard for the clients to know, how did that go? How could I make it better? And so on and so forth. So what we've noticed is that with the increased demand for that program, we are anticipating that we will need to bring on more staff, at least part-time staff, to be able to make sure that we can accommodate all those visits, right? So I think that's where the shortfall is projected. We may bring in revenue such that the shortfall doesn't actually end up happening, but that's what we're thinking about.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Kaylee.
Graham.
I am interested in the Strengthening Families program and in the logic model. You know, you reference measuring success with regards to parenting improving over time, in particular the non-custodial family parent. And I'm wondering sort of what the research or the best practice is that informs, like, how do you measure that or notice that? I mean, I'm sure it's a fairly contrived environment. So how do you know the non-custodial parent is actually becoming a better parent?
Yeah, for sure. So prior to our decision to acquire that program, we sent the two staff people, right, the two social workers who are running it, Rachel Russell and Arlene Brugal, who are the co-directors, down to another CASA program that runs a supervised exchange and visitation program to observe, and then also up to Harmony House in Fort Collins, I believe, where they do supervised exchange and visitation. And they learned about this logic model, right? And so they learned it's one sort of structured decision-making tool that helps you assess whether parents are improving in their relations with each other and in the way that they spend that quality time with the kid. So part of the nuance there is that they observe over time the kinds of things that the parents are saying both to their kids in the visit and also about the custodial parent, because that's a big piece of it. I think a big piece of the domestic relations court's concern is what's called parental alienation, where one parent is sort of like saying negative things about the other in the visit, and that's impacting the kid because kids parrot, right? Then they go back to their custodial parent. So being able to provide like strengths-based, real-time, supportive feedback to that parent and talk about, how are you feeling? You know, what's making you feel this way today? How can we help? How could you state that in a different way? Or even just helping parents understand the impact that might have on kids, and then tracking that over time to see if, like, after 3 months, if mom is the non-custodial parent, has the way that she communicates changed during those visits. That's part of the model, right? Is actually giving people some feedback, being able to reflect back their own words, being able to communicate in a way that's kind of like motivational interviewing, where you're inviting people to change, right? More than saying like, you're doing it wrong. And both Rachel and Arlene, frankly, are just really good at that. And so I think they will be able to kind of document the way that people's relationships with their kids and hopefully with the non-custodial parent improve over time.
Thank you.
Sure.
Karen. And then
Hi,
Paul.
Dana.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Is the Strengthening Family Program in addition to court-appointed visits, or are you the court-appointed visit?
That's a great question. So it is court ordered, but not through the child welfare magistrate. It's court ordered through the domestic relations court. So whomever the judge is who's on the domestic relations court, they're making decisions about custody and contentious divorces. And so that's the court that will actually order if supervised exchange and parenting time is necessary. That court orders it. And then that's the court that, you know, if the court wanted to see a record or hear some feedback from us about what those visits look like, how they're going, how a parent might be improving in terms of their communication or their conduct, that's the court that we would report back to.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Yeah. So yes, they are court ordered in that way.
Holly.
Hi, Dana.
Hi, Holly. Good morning.
Could you explain where you get your referrals?
Yes.
So some of it, well, yes, you go ahead.
Well, no, actually, I'm curious to know, do you want to know about referrals for strengthening families or for the CASA program or both?
I guess all of them.
Sure, yeah. So since January of 2018, the assignment of a court-appointed special advocate is automatic on every single child welfare case that opens up in Boulder County. So we get our referrals as soon as there's an emergency and a child has to be removed from parents' custody. Automatically, a CASA volunteer is ordered at that very first hearing, at the emergency hearing. Now, they won't order a specific person. They won't say, we're ordering Polly Christensen to serve this case, but they'll order the program to do a really intentional match to an available volunteer who'd be a good fit for that kid. For strengthening families, the referrals come in actually essentially from the parents themselves. Typically, the non-custodial parent is ordered by the domestic relations court judge to have, if they want to have parenting time, they're told that they need to have parenting time that is supervised, and they need to find a place that does safe exchange. And with Children's First of the Rockies passing out of existence, there wasn't going to be a place anywhere in Boulder County where that could happen, right? And the department doesn't have the capacity, DHHS does not have the capacity to take that on right now because of COVID and other logistical issues. They're only able to provide one visit per week with biological parents with babies, right? So they definitely could not also take this on. And so the referral comes straight to us, typically from the parent who is told, if you want to do this in Boulder County, this is the agency that might be able to accommodate you.
Caitlin.
So based on the referral system for like CASAs, every kiddo that comes through the program is really a kid who has been in the like dependency and neglect system. So obviously you don't have control over who those kids are, but can you tell me a little bit about what your organization does in terms of trying to address inequities in that system, as well as training volunteers as far as like cultural competency?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I mean, we view our work broadly through all three programs: the child welfare program, the juvenile justice reform program, which is the one that takes referrals for kids who've had a juvenile arrest, and the education CASA program, which is part of the broader truancy improvement project. The express aims of this work are to keep kids out of the school to prison pipeline, to help families stabilize so that parents can have housing, employment, access to healthcare, and the tools that they need to safely parent their children. And with regard to the education CASA program, we're really trying to work with families who have not felt included, have not felt welcome, have not felt integrated or part of their school system, to the extent that their kids have become so disconnected that they've stopped going. So having the advocacy of a CASA can help parents navigate systems, it can help students navigate systems, and it can help empower both, right, kids and their parents to kind of understand what's happening in the court process, where a judge is going to be making decisions about them. The whole CASA model is that, like, no decisions about us without us, right? We want the children who are going to be most impacted by these decisions, whether it's a decision about where it's going to be safe for them to live, whether they need to be in a residential treatment center, whether they need to be in detention, what school they're going to be able to attend. Those are huge life-changing decisions, and we want kids to be able to have a voice, and we want the court to have as much information as possible about how to rule on those issues and what would really be in a child's best interest. And so we train our volunteers to think about the work in this way, right? You might only be working with one child and one family, but ultimately, in helping to empower that child and family to have some stability and to enjoy a loving, familial parenting relationship, you're also helping build a stronger community in Boulder County. To the cultural competency piece, for CASA volunteers, we have about a 40-hour pre-service training, and there's probably 5 hours of content there around cultural competency that go back all the way to the origins of the child welfare system, which are very much the same as the origins of the juvenile justice system, right? In terms of like controlling children that were out on the street running around and considered incorrigible after the Industrial Revolution, right? And sort of notions of like, who knows best how to parent and how to raise children. So we try and give people some level of foundational knowledge around like these systems are rooted in some inequity, in some racism, in some maintaining the status quo, because that's how the law operates. However, you can work within a system to affect systems change, and particularly with child welfare and juvenile justice. I think our CASAs are trying really hard to make these like big bureaucratic systems that can feel kind of impersonal live up to their best ideals in terms of actually serving the best interests of children, treating everybody with dignity and respect, affording the same due process to a parent, whether they're an immigrant family and an immigrant parent, whether they're homeless, whether they're struggling with addiction, whether they're struggling with a mental health issue, regardless of who they are, how they present, what their identity is. We want to make sure that everybody is afforded the same treatment and everybody is understanding of and availed of their legal rights. So we train CASAs really hard and like push for it. If you think a system isn't giving a child or family what they're entitled to under the law, be a squeaky wheel. Do so with respect, but be persistent, be dogged, and be supported by your staff in knowing that what you're doing is systems change and equity work.
Thanks, Dana.
Sure.
Deanna.
So first, I'm just going to say thank you for the work that you do. I am a foster parent, and I have had experience with the CASA program, and it's been hugely instrumental in really making a positive impact on the kids that have been placed in our home, who have had lots of caseworkers through their period of placement, have had lots of therapists, several foster families, but the one consistent thing that they have had is a CASA assigned to their case who has been with them throughout the entire tenure and have been in some instances the only way that they've stayed connected to siblings. Anyway, I just can't thank you enough. Get choked up about this because it's very personal to me. So first of all, thank you. But I guess I had a question about CASA volunteers who are signing up during COVID and whether you've seen an increase or a decrease in volunteers who are interested in doing that work.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for your service as a foster parent, absolutely vital to our work. A neat thing that we've started doing this year is when we run across CASA volunteers who talk about having an interest in fostering, we're actually kind of creating a pipeline to Samantha Frazee, who's the foster care recruiter for Boulder County, because they're having a hard time recruiting and we are not. The interesting thing, this kind of blew my mind, but our recruitment numbers have gone up during COVID. And they went up a whole lot just in the run up to the election. I don't know whether people were looking for just a very local way that they knew they could make a difference in the life of at least one child, kind of regardless of the outcome there, but I think that might have been driving it. So we had our April training just after the shutdown was a little smaller than we were expecting. I think we had like 18 enrolled and then we had 13 who participated. And then the next one was 20 and the next one was 25. And now we have here, the sort of midway through November, we have more people signed up for the January training than we've ever had for a training before. So I think COVID itself, of course, has changed the way that people go about their advocacy. We have policies around what CASAs can and can't do, and reminders about how to do like activities with kids of different ages, with social distancing, with protection measures in place. And before they can accept a case, a volunteer has to sign a waiver acknowledging that they have read that policy and will abide by it. And there's certain things that some of our volunteers just can't do right now, depending on their own health status and their own family's situation or the situation in the family they serve. So it's very much driven by like, how comfortable is the foster family having another adult come into their circle? And what would they need to feel comfortable? Do they need you to get tested every couple of weeks? Is that something you're comfortable doing? Right, so kind of those same screening questions that everybody is asking each other, it feels like. We have our volunteers asking, but we've been, I think, among a very few, small handful of supportive adults that are involved in child welfare and juvenile justice cases who have been able to lay eyes on kids on a regular basis throughout this entire pandemic, with the exception of the period of time that we were all subject to stay-at-home order. And even then, we had CASAs that were leaving to drop off like emergency medical supplies or diapers, like, non-contact, no contact doorstep drop off. We had CASAs that said, well, nobody else can do this and this family is 10 minutes away. I'm just gonna leave a box on the doorstep. But so we've not seen a decrease in our volunteers, in fact, the opposite.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. So thank you.
Me too.
Can I just ask a follow-up question if I'm not jumping on anybody else? Okay. So you had talked a little bit about making intentional matches between CASAs and kids that are in the system and in abuse and neglect cases. I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about that process and how you match those volunteers to the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So some folks on this Zoom might be familiar with this, right? But we have some kids who will ask for a volunteer with some degree of shared lived experience. So for example, in the past year, we've seen a kind of a marked increase in the number of kids that we serve between the ages of like 6 and 12 who identify as transgender. And it's not uncommon that a kid will say, I'd like a volunteer who has some idea, what my life is like at the moment, especially if they've encountered some rejection or abandonment from their family, either as a result of that identity or just for some other reason. Similarly, during training and during our screening process, we ask volunteers to share, as long as they're comfortable doing so, how they identify in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual preference, anything they're willing to share with us that they feel might be germane to our analysis of how to match them on a case, right? Including like what languages they speak, where they've lived, what their own family experience was like growing up. And then when we see a new child welfare petition or a new juvenile delinquency petition come through, we take that limited universe of information we have about the child and family, and we think about which volunteers we have available. We look at, in our database, we look at what they told us when they filled out their case preference sheet about, what subject matter area they were interested in dealing with, what age they wanted to serve, if they had any kind of particular preferences, right? And then we call up that volunteer and offer them, tell them just a little bit about the case in an anonymous way. We don't give them like the address and the name, but we tell them about the case and we give them the opportunity to say, yeah, I feel drawn to that. I think I could be of support there, or no, for whatever reason, that's not the right case for me, which is fine. If people want to take a pass, we just offer them another case sometime in the next few days, right? So that's kind of where that intentional matching process comes in. The one place where there's like a bright line is that we won't match up a volunteer with a family. For example, if the parents are monolingual Spanish speakers, we will not put a volunteer on that case who speaks no Spanish, because we want to make sure that people can communicate enough to explain the role and why they want to have access to somebody's child.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I had Dan, I had a question about the budget, and it was one source of revenue that was, it said it was strengthening families, local and county. It was like $121,000. $8,000. So I was just kind of curious in terms of the source of that.
Sure. I think that, and
or is that carryover from
that's exactly
Children First of the Rockies?
Yeah.
So I was trying to understand that.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And my best understanding, and I may tell you to confirm this one with Jacob because I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, but my understanding is that much of that is the carryover from Children's First of the Rockies. So it came to us. We didn't have to go out and proactively seek it.
Right.
That being said, I believe that we will be seeking additional funding, right? As now that we realize what a need there is for that program. I don't imagine that being kind of the end of the story, but that's where
right. Okay, that's helpful. And where, I know you said your new building is in central Boulder County. So just generally, where is it? And Alberto might know, but I don't know where it is.
Yeah, totally. So it's in Gun Barrel, which is kind of cool because it's basically equidistant.
Near where you used to be?
Very near. Like we could almost have carried our office furniture and our computers over to the new building, right?
Got it.
But so it creates a fairly convenient situation because it takes about the same amount of time to get there from Longmont as it does from downtown Boulder as it does from Lafayette. So it's a really neat building. It looks like a house. It's got a huge backyard. We built a play structure. So there's a play structure installed and picnic tables and 2 kitchens where CASA volunteers can cook with, if they have an older youth on their case, they can teach that older youth how to make a few meals if they're getting ready to go into independent living. The Strengthening Families parents can make a meal during their visit. So it's just a neat property, tons of parking, lots of little things that make it sort of a nice space.
Yeah. And it looks like you spent down your a significant amount of the reserves that you had been amassing over the years, because we
sure did.
We have been asking about what do you do with all those reserves. So so that was you were just waiting for that opportunity, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And our board, I have worked here for 5 years, and there's a reason for that. I mean, I think our board of directors is amazing in that they are both a working board and just excellent at sort of the good governance piece of nonprofit management. And they've been very, very cautious about not swinging at every pitch. So we've been approached over the years with asks to take on a lot of different things that we weren't sure were significantly mission aligned or worth spending down that reserve. And this opportunity to buy the building and to acquire Strengthening Families struck us as the right thing at the right time. And so it's a little scary, obviously, anytime you have to spend down your reserve, but it does have some benefits, right? Because now we don't have that position where we have all of that money sitting there and we're not doing anything with it. And we've been fairly conscientious about trying to keep enough there that who knows what's going to happen with COVID. We want to be really mindful of not having to lay anyone off, or more importantly, decrease the number of families that we can serve, right?
Okay.
So
all right,
that's where
thanks.
we're at.
And I think, Madeline, you have your hand up, and I think you're going to be the last question.
Okay. I am encouraged by your numbers, first of all.
Thank you,
the person that I recall, Mandy, is that the name?
She was with Children First of the Rockies.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And this Children First of the Rockies has been absorbed by Voices for Children, right?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, so my question is Mandy still with the organization?
So that's a great question, Madeline. Thank you for asking. She is not still with the organization sort of by choice. It was, for her, she felt like it was a good time for her to move on and do something different and kind of make a clean break. But what she did do, which has been pretty cool, our last CASA training, right, our training for court-appointed special advocates just wrapped up at the beginning of this month. And she went through that entire training. She audited it just so that she could have a sense of how the court-appointed special advocate program is run and what it takes to be a CASA. I think she wanted to spend some time with all of our staff and get a sense of our organizational philosophy and how we train our volunteers and how we think about working with children and families. So while she did not have to do that, she did do that. So that is her continuing involvement. But now if she ever wanted to take a CASA case, she could, but she has no ongoing role with the Strengthening Families program.
I see. Very good. Very good. Well, again, congratulations on the improvements that I see this year over last year in terms of diversifying your board.
Yeah.
It appears that the client population and other areas. And this is one that I will speak with you offline because I am considering, I was asked about possibly volunteering. And I am considering that.
We can always use more people, so I would love to speak to you anytime that you're interested.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that's
Thank
a wrap, and thank you very much for being solo with us for 30 minutes, Dana, and we really appreciate your work, and have a great rest of your weekend, and stay safe and healthy.
Will do. Thank you so much for your work and for working so hard on a Saturday. It's awesome to see all your faces.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
So our final is YMCA.
Our final is a YMCA.
I have a quick question. I'm a CASA. Is this going to, is it a conflict of interest for me?
CASA, and I asked this at the.
Yeah, so I think it'll be all right. I mean, so probably we'll get to that when you.
Okay.
So you don't have any financial conflicts, that kind of thing. So.
Okay.
All right. So
I'm gonna go ahead
Elliot,
and let him in.
let him in. Our last 30 minutes, same deal. They asked for 2 programs. Good morning. We have Lisa and Lisa.
Morning.
So we have 30 minutes with you because the Y did ask for funding in 2 programs. So we won't necessarily split up our questions per program. We'll just kind of blend those and just kind of go with the flow. So the advisory board has reviewed your application. They are ready to ask you questions. And before we do that, we would ask Lisa and Lisa to introduce yourselves and your role with the agency, and then we'll get started.
Great. I'm Lisa P. I am the YMCA of Northern Colorado's grant writer and development associate.
Great.
And I'm Lisa Sweeney. I'm the Vice President of Community Programs across the Y, overseeing all of our licensed and unlicensed child care and teen programs.
All right, great. So thank you for being with us this morning. And who wants to ask Graham? Graham has the first question, and then Deanna.
Hi, Lisa's. My question, I'm just trying to wrap my head around the financial aspect here. It looks like you're asking for a total of $50,000, but each particular program budget is showing $50,000 going to direct salaries and teachers, et cetera. And then, so that's sort of one part. The second part is $0 are shown in fundraising. And is that because you don't fundraise for these programs, or you just don't allocate general fundraising funds to these programs? I'm just trying to understand that.
Hopefully that was, maybe it wasn't clear in the application. We are asking for $50,000 for preschool, and then an additional $50,000 for the virtual learning support for Longmont. We do fundraising, so I'm not sure why that wasn't in there, but we'd have our annual community support campaign, which raises money for our financial aid, which we use heavily for both programs. So we do get some funding for financial aid through fundraising, but not for staffing dollars or anything like that.
Thank you.
Deanna.
So in looking at your application for both the programs, I was looking at the makeup of your board, and you had listed for your race and ethnic makeup of the board other for all 40 members of the board. I'm just wondering if you have any statistics on the race and ethnic makeup of your board.
I had asked our admin who oversees the board, and they don't collect any data on that, so I don't have anything specific for you, unfortunately.
So if I can add to, can I add to that? No. Yep. So, so the Y did not provide us any kind of demographic information on anybody, on your staff, your board, or your clients.
Right. I asked HR too, and we don't collect any like ethnic, racial on any of our staff or anything like that. So I don't have that information. So the suggestion that I would make is that you know, we really are interested in who you're serving and who is helping to make policy. So we get that information from almost every other agency that applies for funding. So I would say if the Y wants to be considered for funding, that you figure out a way to get that information, or it will significantly impact, I would say, your score and what your fund. So anyhow, I'm sure you can find a way to get that data for us. So Deanna, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but it was my question. I had a question on my list, so I thought, oh, I'll just do that now, and you might have another question, Deanna. Sorry.
No, I mean, that's essentially what I was going to say, is that as a board, we prioritize, or we take that very much into consideration. And so that's why it stood out for me from the application. So I was just going to provide the same feedback, that we would really appreciate having that information and making decisions on scoring your organization.
Thank you. I will definitely let HR really know that. I know in our past applications too, that was listed. It hadn't been brought up or anything last year, but we didn't have that info then. So I'll definitely let them know that it needs to be a priority to be collecting that.
Well, and then HR is not necessarily responsible, I would say, for your participant data. So I don't know how you're capturing.
Oh, we have participant data.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Just not the staff, and members in general. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, can I ask one more follow-up question, and then I'll stop hogging the meeting? But can you maybe give, just because that leaves us sort of in the dark in terms of assessing the makeup of your board, could you give us maybe some information about how you do recruitment for your board, where you get most of your members of the board, what it's comprised of, if you have any idea in terms of how it reflects members of the community overall?
So we do have a board development committee, and I know that we, as far as these programs specifically that we're talking about, because they are school, whether early childhood or school age, we have representation from every level of school that we serve. So we have in school districts, so we have I'm trying to think. Lisa, who's the one from Weld?
We have Leslie Arnold from Weld County, the superintendent of the Weld RE5J.
So we have like a superintendent. We have from Angevine in Boulder County. We have the vice principal. So we have representation from CU, and then from various, just geographically, we have several members from Longmont who represent Longmont, who represent Boulder, just because we do have a broad base there. So we do have representation from kind of, all different school levels that we serve, as well as geographically.
Thank you.
Caitlin.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for being with us. I am looking at the specifically at the early childhood education, and my understanding is that you all basically provide preschool age services for folks. The tuition amount, can you tell me how tuition is determined and where those funds come from? Are they coming from families? Are they coming from other sources?
It's definitely a range. We do an annual evaluation of tuition costs for preschool throughout Longmont. So we're looking at all of the preschool programs, the Kinder Cares and Primrose and TLC and Junior Jets, all of the different programs. And we typically aim to have that, we take that average and we try to be around 25 to 30% lower than any of those programs We accept a lot of CCAP. So we have, it really fluctuates. Right now, our CCAP numbers are much higher, almost 50%. It could even this week be higher than 50% of our kids in our preschool there are on CCAP assistance. If they're not on CCAP, we're offering financial assistance. We've also worked with EFA in Boulder County. We have 3 families and another one starting this next week that are experiencing homelessness that are within our program. So their funds are covered. We give EFA a very significant discount. They pay about 25%, and we pick up the other 75% internally on financial assistance. So we're doing those things. We have a family that's just reached out through a church in Longmont that they're going to underwrite some of that cost, and we'll put them on a 50% discount. So the church is going to be picking up our regular tuition for 5 full days is $963 a month. So that church is going to pick up half that, and then we'll absorb the other half. So we have, we try to stay definitely around 25 to 30% lower than any of our other competitors. But honestly, we're very sliding scale. Now with remote learning going into place, I know you specifically asked about preschool, but with remote learning coming back, we're anticipating St. Vrain falling back to remote learning within the next couple of weeks. And with that, we're working with UC Health and Boulder Community Health, Joe Pelly's office in Boulder for the Sheriff's Department, that will do some significant reductions based on need to keep those emergency personnel able to go to work every day. So there's a lot of case-by-case happening right now with emergency services and things like that. So we have quite a bit of structure in place there, but we're definitely trying to undercut some of that cost for people right now so they can be at work.
Great, thanks. And you alluded a little bit to the virtual learning. My understanding is that in Boulder County, many of the early childhood education programs, in particular in preschools, have actually stayed open throughout.
Yes.
Have not. Have you all stayed open the entire time, even with stay-at-home orders? And have you seen an increased demand for your services as a result of, others having to close because of outbreaks and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Yep. The school districts closed on March 12th here in Longmont, as well as Boulder County, pretty much across the state. And we resumed care immediately. We didn't, in our preschool, we didn't have a single day of disruption, as well as our school age. Schools closed on the 12th, and we had emergency childcare going on the 16th. We've been open, we've pivoted between virtual learning support, emergency care, before and after school care for a hint of time within that hybrid model, summer camp. So we've been open 7 to 6 every single day. Our numbers have fluctuated. In the very beginning, when we went to emergency care, there was a lot of discussion within the state of whether we could only provide care to essential personnel. Within our program, we have a lot of children that are in foster care or that are in situations that are being monitored through CDHS. So we really petitioned to those folks and to CCAP that if we had kids that, even if their parent wasn't an essential worker, we knew those kids needed to be coming to us for safety or for food security reasons and things like that as we were providing meals. So we were able to keep those kids in with us for some stability for them and protective factors. But yes, we've had, and our numbers are up and down. It really depends. We're actually a little lower in enrollment right now because we've had a lot of families lose their jobs as hourly employees. We've had to really adjust and adapt to people needing very part-time schedules or this schedule one week and this schedule and next week. So we're all over the place with schedules right now just to accommodate those needs. We had a little span there where there were some restrictions on our class sizes and capacity. So we had to adjust to that. Which pushed us down in what we could allow. But for our school age program, we changed our entire facility around. We took our racquetball courts, our Group X rooms, our Pilates studios, and we turned those into temporary emergency child care spaces. So we had a great partnership with the health department and our licensors to be able to do that, which allowed us to serve, just a varied number of kids based on need there for those first few months. And we're kind of looking at that model again coming up very quickly as there's talk of stay-at-home orders and things coming in and possible smaller group sizes. So we're working on that day-to-day of being ready to adapt again.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
It is a wild time in the childcare business. So
Is
can't
in these
even
quarantines, and we have, if someone in the household came into contact with someone that's positive, it puts us into a quarantine. Can't say enough about the health department. They've got some really amazing people that are walking lockstep with us through this process. So it's been.
Yeah. So are you all applying for some of the childcare assistance that is being offered through the various government CARES Act funding? So like City of Longmont, Boulder County, so City of Boulder. So what are you,
So
are you in line?
I think I can answer that better than.
Okay, Alberto.
Yeah, because I'm involved in all those conversations. The Y is in a very special, unique situation at this point. So they are getting some direct funding from the CARES Act through the county, and the county is also increasing their HHS allocation to the Y, similarly like they did to the R Center, if you remember that, Karen.
Yeah.
So, for example, they are not, at this point, I don't think they're eligible for our Longmont child care because the county's stepping up and supporting the Y.
Okay.
So that's what I know in my
They're getting CARES Act funding though.
Right, from the county.
Yeah. So Lisa P, did you want to add to that?
Nope, he basically covered
Okay.
it.
All right, thanks. I thought you raised your hand.
No.
So how are things financially at the Y? So, we hear lots of different scenarios, and so just from your perspective on what you know, what are some of the significant challenges? Obviously, we saw some numbers on your funding application. So, how do you help us understand what some of your challenges are?
Right. I would say at large, I mean, we have seen huge loss of revenue. Just while we have been able to keep running, throughout the pandemic, our preschool and our emergency childcare, school age programs, so many of our other programs were halted to a stop for months. Some still really aren't running even now. So we've also seen reduced hours of our facilities. People, during the initial shutdown, we were fully closed to everyone but emergency childcare. But since then, we have opened up. I think it was more in June we started opening back up. And we see members come in, but it's nothing like it was before. I think there's just a lot of hesitancy and caution, which we understand. So we have seen reduced hours at our facilities. But we didn't run our resident camp, Camp Santa Maria, this summer, which is a huge, huge source of revenue for us every summer. So we didn't have that at all. And like Lisa Swaney had mentioned earlier, for the programs that we are running, we're giving out more financial aid than ever. We're more CCAP than ever. So that's also, even though we're running that program, we're running it at a huge revenue loss. So we are an organization with a rather large budget, but we're looking at, as far as forecasting, I think it's somewhere around like $3.5 million that we're looking at being negative this year, just from the accumulation of all the revenue loss. Yep.
Current loss these last couple months and what we're looking at going into the end of the year is somewhere $250,000 to $300,000 a month. Our costs are not really going down, especially in childcare. We're still paying when our staff is on quarantine. CCAP's still only paying 2 absent days a month right now. We're hoping that goes up because a lot of the other programs throughout Boulder County have stopped taking CCAP, or some of the smaller providers have closed. So we've absorbed a lot of kiddos into CCAP. With Head Start looking at doing a 6 to 8 week closure coming up. We've been in discussion with them of how we can support them and bring some of those kids in for the parents that don't just need the preschool aspect, but need childcare, of bringing them in. But that's a big risk for us in that we're only being paid for 2 of their absent days. And if they're on a 14-day quarantine, which is the CDPHE guidance of an isolation period, then we're losing that revenue opportunity by holding a spot open for CCAP. But that's our mission, and we're figuring that out. We'll do that. But our costs are really still there. If our staff are on quarantine, they're receiving COVID pay. COVID has changed our operation in that we need an extra person every morning to provide curbside drop-off, to do well checks and temperature checks. An extra person that's on the ready every second of every day in all of our programs, that if we have a child that starts coughing or develops a fever, that we can isolate that child to keep the rest of the population safe. We have staff that are just planned in every day that do nothing but clean all day long. So they walk around and clean door handles and do those things. So our cost is there. Our cleaning supply cost has skyrocketed. A bottle of bleach that used to cost us 50 cents when we were going through that panic period back in March and April, $10, $12 for a bottle of bleach. So those costs have gone up, and just the amount of cleaning supplies and things we're using. We've also started a food pantry at our preschool because a lot of those families are needing those services. So we're funding through our board and donations and anything that we can bring in. We're funding a food pantry, and we refill that probably 3 times a week right now. Just to make sure families have food to take home at night. So I think our cost is so high, and yeah, almost everybody is on some kind of financial assistance with us right now. People are either searching for jobs or just trying to make ends meet on that end. Or we have a lot that need just 2 or 3 weeks to get caught up. If they have a car that breaks down or something, they're needing 2 or 3 weeks to catch up. So we're 100% scholarshiping families a lot right now. We know those kids need us and they need to be in our program. So we're just trying to serve that mission piece, but it's getting hard.
So
the grant funds dry up right now.
$250,000 to $300,000 a month loss is a lot. So I can't imagine that the agency can take that for a long period of time. So I mean, so do you have a sense for what the board strategy is?
We have executive and senior staff meetings multiple times every week. So we're looking at that, what we need to do in terms of endowment and loans and things like that. Our Splash event that Lisa was hugely involved in was very successful this year. We have Colorado Gives Day coming up, some end of year giving and things like that. But we are looking strategic. I will tell you, we've had very significant layoffs even this week within our school age programs, now that we know we're going to remote learning, and we're going to consolidate from 30 school age sites across the counties we're in. We'll be down to about 10 sites. So we have laid off employees. We've had to. Our sports department has laid off because we can't host sports anymore.
Right.
Aquatics. So it's really impacting all lines of our business. But essentially, it really hits to childcare. But our CEO is the most mission-based person I think I've ever met, and he says we are going to figure it out. We're going to apply and do to keep our childcare operation going. So,
okay, all right, thank you. Other questions? We have about 9 minutes left. Deanna.
I don't know if you answered this. Sorry, I had to step away a couple times. Have you had to waitlist anybody during this for childcare during all of this craziness?
We have not so far. No. If we do, given our current numbers, if we do go back to limited capacities, we may have to do some prioritizing based on where our numbers are right now. And if we have to go back to the minimum 10 group size, we may have to look at prioritizing. So we'll see, and we'll tackle that when it comes. Again, we have the flexibility of having these giant facilities that we can close down sports, we can close down Pilates or racquetball, things like that, and use those spaces if need be. We will prioritize childcare over our swim and gym aspects.
Okay, thanks. And then I had another question about structure of how you're providing childcare for school-age kids during this time period. While the parents, or while the school districts have been on this hybrid program where kids are going like Monday, Wednesday, and out Tuesday, Thursday. So have you had to adjust your enrollment to reflect those types of scenarios, or how are you handling that?
Again, we have all of our spaces on the ready. They're all temporarily licensed for emergency care, so we can activate that license at any point. So at Longmont, technically on any given day, we can take 90 children in school-age care. We've changed over like our child watch and our racquetball court and things to have tables that are socially distanced. We've added to our internet in that building and some safe electrical lines that we can be able to plug in a lot of iPads need be when we're doing the virtual learning support throughout the morning. We've made sure that we've staffed up with bilingual staff, knowing our population in Longmont. So most of our bilingual staff are working in Longmont to be able to support those families there because that's becoming a really big hurdle. For the online learning, if they don't have someone that, if there's a language barrier and they need someone to help them in process and site. So, you know, I don't know that, I think we'll be able to meet the demand in Longmont. When they're in the hybrid, we only have about half the kids because we're open 5 days a week. Some go to school a couple days a week. But if they all need to come 5 days a week, I think we've still got enough bandwidth and enough capacity space within that building to house whoever.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Hi.
Madeline.
Yes. Hi. I just wanted to just reiterate that my concern that the information that we initially requested at the beginning of the meeting regarding your demographics is not captured for board and staff. Is that what I am to understand you were said?
Yeah, Madeline, that is what we talked about, that HR does not capture that at this point in time for the Y.
Okay, and the request is for $100,000, $50,000 each, correct?
For each program, yes.
Okay, that's what I needed clarification on. Thank you very much.
Okay, anything else? All right, so Lisa, is there anything else you think that we need to know? And we can always end early. The board's been at us since 9 o'clock, bless their hearts. So, but if there's anything else that you would like us to know as we consider your applications, you certainly have a few minutes to, the floor is yours.
I think a thank you for hearing us out, understanding you've funded us in the past and those dollars have gone to serve a lot of families throughout Longmont. It's been, you know, it's been a challenge this year. We're facing, just like every agency, major challenges coming up. Unfortunately, we're really feeling like COVID is here for quite a while. We're going to battle through this through 2021. And we're seeing the struggles of our families and we just want to be there to serve them. We're going to figure it out regardless. We will work through things and we continue to figure it out. We're hoping there's more government stimulus and PPP funds coming down the line. But who knows, with it being a political year, that could be an impact and we'll figure it out. Lisa and her team work constantly. She and I work hand in hand every day looking at funds of how we can support these families in any way that we need to. But we are very committed to being here. We're going to stay open. We're going to make this work through the challenges.
Okay, all right, great. Well, thank you for what you're doing to serve children and families in Longmont, and we appreciate that very much. So, unless Lisa P., if you had anything to add?
No, I think Lisa Sweeney covered it. I was just gonna add, just again, piggybacking off of that, is that the Y isn't going anywhere. We will always face, whatever challenge is thrown at us, we will figure it out. And really, it's ingrained in our mission that we change with the needs of the community. So Lisa Swaney's team is constantly doing that on calls with the health department, with parents, as a group, but also making sure truly every individual family is served in the way they need, and that we can best serve them. So I just wanted to highlight that and the amazing job her team's been doing.
All right, fabulous. Well, thank you both, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, and do stay healthy and safe in our COVID world. So
yes, thank you. Same to all of you guys. Thank you for letting us talk to you guys. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Be well. Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
All right.
So advisory board, that's it for today. You have the rest of the weekend off to review more proposals for Monday.
Exactly. Karen,
I'm curious.
I will be traveling Monday.
Okay.
And, I don't know if I will be stabilized by our start time is at 2.
We start at 2, right? So
At
we
2, yeah.
are on for Monday afternoon from 2 until 4:45.
Well, I will definitely make every effort to be on, assuming that I get landed and, like I said, get stable in time to get on. And whenever I can jump on, I will.
Okay. All right. Sounds great. Any questions, or are you ready to take a breather? Thank you very much for spending our Saturday morning together. So
Thanks, Karen, for helping keep everyone moving along.
okay. All right. Great.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.